Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show on a Redemption Thursday / Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you have a great one. Love Halloween. Halloween's awesome. I'm Jeff. That is Tom on Twitter. It is at J Cameron Show. Yep. Tell you right off the bat, this episode is recorded earlier in the day so that we can do the Halloween thing later. Also, the studio was getting some stuff done from a technical standpoint. So really, it was a gift to be able to get this done earlier in the day, but wouldn't be a Redemption Thursday if we didn't do the right thing and have some selections for you. Now, the way this is going to work is that Tom and I kind of did this in pieces throughout the course of the day leading up to the 1 o'clock start time. And I'm waiting on some information for the NFL, but I already gave you 9 right off the bat, 9 college games, which I might add, if you look at the graphic right now, I went 8-2 last week. That has greatly upped the percentage. Tom has the nice little graphic scrolling down at the bottom for you. My Redemption Thursday wagers on the year, I am 44-36. That is a 55% winning percentage. That is making you money. Hopefully, that continues as we roll on Big River, as I like to say, right off the bat, taking the Canes. You know, this number was 21.5 most of the week. This morning, it was 20.5, and I bet it. Give me Miami minus 20.5 against what I think is a fraudulent Duke team. Minnesota, Illinois, both been playing better offensively. I'm going to go over that 45.5 number between those two. By the way, same game. Don't quite understand why Illinois is not favored, but they're not. I'll take them on the money line at plus 125. The reason being, if you took the plus 2.5, you get it at plus 100. Just give it to me to win the game outright. Fat Bielema, you can do it, baby. Ole Miss minus 7. I think Arkansas sucks. I'll lay it. Ohio State, Penn State should be an ugly defensive war. I'll go under 45. Virginia Tech and Syracuse. Syracuse isn't any good. Virginia Tech is playing like they were supposed to play at the start of the year, but didn't. Now they're playing that way. I'll give the 4. Auburn minus 6.5 against Vandy. Auburn beginning to find a little bit of offense. Some signs that maybe they're figuring some things out. Vandy comes crashing down. Give me Auburn minus 6.5. Michigan State plus 7.5. Another one of these bets that Indiana is not as good as you think they are. That schedule is pathetic. Michigan State's been playing better lately, and at home, I like the hook. I'll take the 7.5. I think Pitt and SMU both score on one another in this game. I'll go over 57.5. If you guys want to take that under, you can. That number keeps going up, by the way. I bet it this morning at 57.5. Tom, at the time that you and I are talking today, it's already up to 58.5. People are recognizing that the two teams aren't going to get stops. I'll have NFL picks, probably props, later in the show, hour 2, hour 3, something like that. We'll add to the ledger. But we wanted to come out the gate swinging after a big weekend last weekend, and the hope is that we can add to it and keep this thing rolling. I'll take 44-36 after that abysmal just 500 start that I got off to, Tommy.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. Again, when you're forced to play 10 games, you're going to have a worse record than if you were going to cherry pick the 4 or 5 that you like. I know some weekends you bet 20 anyway in your personal life. I never really get that. I never get to that point. It's just because I'm not researched enough to do that many games, to play that many games. I will say I find it interesting that there is a tax. There's a Lane Kiffin tax, which is reputation for allowing teams that you have no business to be in a game to routinely be in that football game and cover, because Arkansas plus 7 is really low. I was looking at that game this week because, again, Lane and Ole Miss have Georgia next week, so it's a nice little look-ahead spot. For Arkansas, it could make their season, so you understand why there would be a couple of factors there that would benefit you if you're trying to play Arkansas, but 7 is light. So Vegas is hip to it, and they're saying, yeah, we know. Lane will do this, so let's keep it at 7. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, let's take a look at Lane really quickly on the year. 76-0 over Furman, 52-3 over Middle Tennessee State. Right away, everybody's like, oh, the Lane train's rolling now. They did beat Wake Forest 40-6. By the way, Tom, again, we say these things in passing, but it really angers me that we are watching just the dissolvement of an entire conference. Wake Forest playing Ole Miss should not get beat at home 40-6. It's like they're just like the entire league not named Clemson and Miami this year is just bitch made. It's so sad.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, if you're good at Wake for 2 or 3 years, that reputation carries, and you're like, oh, Wake's not bad, but they crater, and nobody catches up to it because nobody cares. That could be the fastest growing fan base in America. I guarantee you that nobody cares. And so when they play well, you're like, oh, they're still good, right? Their offense will score a bunch of points. No, man. No. Even last year, that was one of the few Saturdays where our offense lit somebody up after LSU was on the road at Wake.
They beat Georgia Southern 52-13. Then things got interesting. They had the hiccup against Kentucky. Lane afterwards commended Mark Stoops for breaking character and doing something he never does and going for it in a situation that he doesn't do. I actually thought it was funny. I had to give Lane credit. He's like, I got to give Mark credit. He did something he never does. That was 20-17. Now, we could not have known in the moment that Kentucky was about to give up on the entire season after getting a win against Ole Miss, but they have. Ole Miss beat South Carolina 27-3. That's the sneaky part about this Ole Miss team, is that occasionally their offense is disappointing, Tom, when they play good teams, but their defense has played well. Yeah. They lost to LSU in overtime at LSU at night, 29-26, in what was a great game. They beat Oklahoma 26-14 coming into this Arkansas game. Just kind of a weird team. Most years you'd look at Lane's offense and you think that'll be the catalyst. I think in the bigger games, they've played good defense.
Yeah, no, watching the LSU game, because I had a parlay on it, LSU had to hit a lot of situational things to win that football game. 20-20, Ole Miss was dominating, time of possession, yards per play. But again, in certain situations, LSU was shining brighter, and that's why they were able to get the game to the late moments and then find a way to win the football game. But again, you look at Lane's history last year, Arkansas, they beat by 7. They were much better. They were I think they were top 10 team in the country at that point. They beat Arkansas by just 7. They beat Auburn on the road by just 7. I know that Alabama. You
know what a big win that was, Tom. That could have propelled them into the playoff.
A&M was a mess last year. We all know that. They beat them 38-35. And then in the Egg Bowl, they only won by 10. They scored 17 points in the Egg Bowl, 17-7. So this is why the reputation is earned. Arkansas lost by 7 last year. They smoked Lane 2 years ago. Now, that was a much better Sam Pittman, Woo Pig Sooie team. But maybe they feel like there's a matchup there, because that's a line that you're playing, just like you played BYU, UCF, where it feels like they're daring you to play Ole Miss, and you're wondering.
Yeah. I took them up on their dare. Just like I took them up on that BYU dare, like you said. I'm like, man, I don't see it. Why are we ever going to put money on Gus Malzahn? Why are we putting any money on UCF? They haven't showed up against anybody. They didn't show up against Florida. They didn't show up against Colorado. They didn't show up They don't show up. They don't win games that they're supposed to win. Screw UCF. I know they played BYU tough. They were the favorites. They're supposed to win the game. Tough luck. I took the undefeated team that does show up. BYU's tough.
The undefeated underdog on October 26th.
Yeah.
Strange.
It's very strange. Some fun games actually this weekend. I actually think the college slate, from a sexiness standpoint, in terms of ranked versus ranked, there's not a lot. But from a matchup standpoint, and if you do like to gamble, say you are a sporting guy or gal, you got a lot of cool matchups this week. Like this you referenced it earlier. This might be one of my 15 to 20 play weekends. Because if I combined what I've got in college with what I'm going to get in the NFL, most I've done this year in any one weekend, I think, was 23 wagers in one weekend. And I think we could get close to that this weekend, because I think there's a mixture of things that I'd like to touch on, including the hockey, Tom. How about our Bolts last night? There you go. Actually, the goal of the year last night, just a beautiful play behind the net, a little back pass. Get you some of that.
Shades of Dominic Moore in the 2011 Cup run, the Eastern Conference Finals run for Tampa Bay. Yeah, that's a play that doesn't usually work. But when it does, it's the easiest looking thing in the world. We've got a good club. They got 2 lines that can score, because they have a kid they traded for. Yeah, that is 20 years old and he can play.
He can really play. Yeah.
You need at minimum 2 lines who can score. Tampa has it. So keep an eye on those, you people. We do get emails from time to time about, hey, what about the hockey wagers? Keep an eye on Tampa, 7-3 quietly to start the season.
We'll get back to doing some Red Russians. Enough time has passed since the invasion. We can do some Red Russian wagers here soon enough. We wanted to steer clear from it when they were invading a sovereign nation and laying waste to the innocent civilians of the Ukraine, and
which they still are.
Which they still are. It's just that enough time has passed, Tom. We're numb to it now. It doesn't really. Kidding. I'm somewhat kidding.
You might see that at the voting booth on Tuesday. Who the hell?
Yeah, who knows? By the way, I did watch the World Series last night. We have the champion. Baseball season is over. The Dodgers have eliminated the Yankees and thus have raised on high another World Series championship, their second in 5 years. This one validates the first one a little bit more, just like it did for the Lightning. Everybody loves to put an asterisk next to the COVID championships because there's no fans in the stands. But this one had plenty of fans in the stands, and they were all in New York watching their Yankees look like a little league team in the fifth inning. Holy moly. It's one thing to get eliminated from the World Series after you've built a big lead at home in a game that, if you win, makes the World Series very interesting. And then it's another to watch that lead blown because you can't pick up the baseball. Sweet Jesus. That was buffoonery. It starts with a simple, easy semi-line out, if you want to call it that, to Aaron Judge, who looked like the kids I saw playing Little League with Bryce, just out here dropping balls like clowns, which opens the floodgates. Then you obviously have a play that is as routine as it comes. You get a tailor-made ball to shortstop. It's the shortest throw on the diamond. He's right next to third base and somehow spikes it into the earth. I'm like, what are you doing? And then you get my man Cole not covering first on a ground out to first. All three of those plays, save for maybe the play to first, that's a kind of tweener moment. I might give you a slight pass on that one. But the other two are as routine as it gets. They're made every day in college. It's like, or high school. I mean, that's crazy to have that happen. And if you think about it, the Dodgers needed all 6 of those outs that they got in that inning. All 6 were necessary for them to cash in the chips, but they got it. And they finally did because Freddie Freeman's really good. and this is what happens. And thus he ends up winning the MVP. Rightfully so, not a surprise. I will note that the prior game, Game 4, which the Yankees had to win to keep the series alive, did you see, Tom, that drew 16.7 million viewers? I looked up today that was 92% more than watched Game 4 last year in the World Series. 92%. What a boon for Major League Baseball this year. It's unbelievable. By the way, Freeman, 12 runs batted in, ties a World Series record. He rightfully wins the MVP.
I find it interesting that Tuesday there were higher ratings than Monday. You would think that Monday in a Game 3 would be higher rated, but Tuesday in a 3-0 setting, there were higher ratings.
I don't know what that was about. Maybe less on television?
I mean, if you're telling me that Steelers Giants is that valuable, I mean, that really speaks to the value of the NFL. Like, that's
the Steelers.
It's a bad football game. I mean,
it is. You and I get that, but Steelers fans, as you know, are bountiful. They're everywhere. There's not a city that I've been to in America that if I've had the occasion to go to a sports bar on that Sunday, I could be in New York, I could be in Chicago, I could be in Minneapolis one year, I was in Denver another year, I've been in Los Angeles. But any of these cities, if you go to a sports bar on a Sunday during the NFL season in any big city, there is a legion of Steelers fans that have occupied a corner of that bar to watch their team. So I do think they're probably up there with, obviously, the Cowboys as the kind of franchise that can deviate viewers from a Yankees-Dodgers World Series for a night, even with a bad matchup. Those are just, I mean, would you say it's Raiders? It's Steelers, Cowboys, Raiders, Packers.
Yeah.
It's probably those 4, right?
Yeah, and Chiefs now because everybody likes a winner.
Well, true, but that is really, I mean, if you think about that market, it's not a great market. Like, I laugh. People will always kind of talk about how, well, it seems like the Chiefs get all the breaks. It seems that way because you're tired of them. But believe me, the NFL is not stumping for the Chiefs. I mean, that market is whatever.
No, they were like the Patriots for decades. You're like, man, it'd be nice for them to win once in a while. I remember saying that on this show. Like, one day Kansas City.
Because I like the franchise.
Yeah, they were my soft spot team. They were my soft spot NFL team. And now they're not because they've had enough. Let's find a new team to have a soft spot for. They've had plenty. And they're going to get more. So that's fine. It is not lost on me that you called Little Leaguers clowns for how they field. That's not lost on me.
Well, listen, they're not clowns. They field like clowns. Little kids can't pick up the baseball, Tom. I've sat through many a game where we were never going to leave. We were going to be there all night because somebody can't pick up a ball and walk over to first and touch the base. Can't do it. Cannot do it.
Well, and because of that, they ruined my sleep schedule. The Lightning were up large enough. I was thinking time to go to bed. And then as I'm about to lights out, I'm like, oh, there's a rally. Oh, man, I'm going to have to stick it out here and watch this thing start to finish. And it was worth it, though. It was worth it. And poor Luke Weaver, wasn't his fault. He managed through that situation as best as he could. And honestly, I think if you gave Aaron Boone the option to say, look, bases loaded, nobody out, you're going to lose the lead here. Like, you're going to lose it. But it's only by one run, and you have 2, 3, 4 coming up in the order next half. He'd say, I'd take it. Their bullpen is running out of steam. But the key inning there was Trinan in the 8th. That Trinan could get through the 8th inning. That's the one. The moment that they get out of it, you feel like the World Series is done. Whoever they bring in, and they were probably going to be bringing in Buehler, Trapper Keeper. Like, this was the moment for the Yankees. The bottom half of that order doesn't do diddly. So here it is, 8th inning or bust, and it was bust.
Give the Dodgers credit. When they were down to the Padres and up against it, they were facing elimination. One of the things that I talked about, and I turned out to be wrong, was that heading into these playoffs, it seemed unlikely to me that the Dodgers would win the World Series because they were so beat up with their pitching. They had like 2 starting pitchers that you could feel even okay about going into the postseason. Now, we all knew the lineup was loaded. We all knew they could hit, but we were talking about how difficult it is to bash your way to a World Series title. See, ask the Yankees. It's very hard to do. You have to get outs. You have to miss bats. Because you're going to run into another team that has an offense too. You've got to be able to get people out. And the Dodgers bullpen, at the end of the day, along with a resurgent Walker Buehler and others, really stepped in and became much better than I thought they could. And it started with the way that bullpen pitched against the Padres up against it.
Yeah.
Up against it.
Yeah. Well, and then they also got timely hitting from different dudes. Like Ohtani did nothing in the World Series and Freeman went to another planet. And so that was what accounted for. I mean, he had 12 of their 20 runs, 21 runs, whatever. He drove in. And then in the NLCS, Tommy Edman, you couldn't get him out, and Max Muncy reached 12 straight times. Good Lord, I hope if we had gotten World Series Max Muncy in the NLCS, we might be playing right now still. But that's when you win championships. It's not a complaint. When you win championships, different rounds or different games, whatever you want to say, if it's football because it's one game at a time, different dudes. They stand out in those moments, and that's how you get there. For us with the Buccaneers, Leonard Fournette made an awfully big play in the NFC Championship game. Our kicker with a hidden huge moment in Lambeau Field with Tom Brady to help us get over the hump. Devin White had a couple of big games. Everybody, Antonio Brown had a big game. Rob Gronkowski. But at different points on the journey, you need different players to be great. Ohtani's arm has fallen out of its socket, so he's kind of dead to rights. Freddie Freeman is your World Series hero. Now he can be Mr. World Series because he homered in 6 straight games. Didn't homer last night, but of course he drove in a couple of more. Like that's how championships are won. Is you have different players in different moments, and I feel like the Mets might have been on the medal stand this year because they pushed the Dodgers better than the Yankees did. But what are you going to do? That team is just too loaded. That's why you have a $300 million payroll, because you might have I forgot. He can actually be good if he just captures his talent. And that's what happened with Flaherty in a couple of key moments, and then Buehler as well.
Well, this is where it was, right? The Dodgers beat the Padres, who have the number 15 payroll in baseball. So the Padres were overachieving. I'm surprised it was that low, by the way. They've spent a lot of money. Number 1 payroll and the number 2 payroll. So they've beaten the 1 and 2 payrolls in baseball in back-to-back series, and then the number 15 payroll against the Padres. The Dodgers obviously have a very, very large payroll as well. In fact, if you go back and look at the last two teams to win the World Series, the Rangers last year used basically an advance for their World Series. They backed in part by a 25-year, $8.35 billion local media rights deal. The Dodgers with Spectrum revitalized Dodger Stadium to go with the money that they spent on Shohei Ohtani. And you look at that. I mean, that was a 10-year, $700 million deal with the Dodgers. And to say that Ohtani might have been the catalyst for a 98-win season would be an understatement, right? He was unreal, the first ever 50-50. He did better than that. And that shattered every record in professional sports, that contract did. And then, obviously they deferred $680 million of that money until after the decade-long term of the deal. So that's pretty well amazing too. And he outdid the expectations of that contract. But I think it's funny because that contract overshadows the contract that they gave the World Series MVP, which was 6 years, $162 million in March of 2022. And at the end of the day, it was that deal, at least in this World Series, that won them the World Series, because that guy came up big, and he's been great for all 3 seasons. He was simply sensational. And that included a most memorable and all-time great walk-off grand slam with 2 outs in the bottom of the 10th. We'll remember it forever. As you said, he drove in 12 for the World Series. That's doing some things in a 5-game World Series to drive in 12.
Oh, it's wild. And, as an NL East guy, I know there's a lot of Braves fans listening to the program, and that was, a big one for them to lose. They didn't want to lose Freddie Freeman, but they made the most of it by getting Olsen and Murphy out of that.
Replaced him with Olsen.
Right, and they got Murphy out of that deal too with the A's. So, I mean, Anthopoulos plays 3D chess at all times, but Freddie is one of the 5-6 players on the planet that when he's locked in, it's so hard to strike him out. Yeah. I know he had a couple of whiffs last night. His foot has more to do with that than his eye. When he gets locked in, it's just so impossible to get a baseball by him without him getting a bat on it. And he went to that place. He went to that place in this World Series. If he never does another thing again, I suspect he will. But if he never does another thing again, that dude is a Hall of Famer. He just is. And this October cements it for him.
You can find it online. We'll take a break here in a second. You can find it online, and we'll address Florida State, by the way, who comes into this game on Saturday as a 2.5-point underdog. By the way, I might like Florida State. So here's the thing. Listening to Freddie Freeman describe an at-bat when he was asked about his approach. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Instagram. Just type in Freddie Freeman at bat or whatever. Actually, if you do that, you're going to find the Grand Slam. But search around a little bit, and you'll find what I'm talking about. It was such a joy to listen to him have the conversation about how in his mind, what a good at bat is, and how you approach strike by strike. Pitch by pitch. So a 1-0 count, a 1-1 count, a 1-2 count, an 0-2 count, a 2-2 count, a 3-2 count. He goes through the whole thing and talks about how he sees that. And it basically depicts what we all wish more of our superstar players did, which is to try to put the ball in play. And he cites the percentages over the course of a 162-game season that emerge from that approach about putting the ball in play. How many extra on-base moments you'll have in a 162-game season by simply not striking out. Like, he'll admit, he's like, baseball's fickle. It's weird. If you just put the bat to the ball because you change your approach, it could fall between 4 people. It could not get picked up. It could end up fine. It could be a seeing eye single that has no business. It could be any number of things, but obviously you cannot do anything with a strikeout. You don't make anybody do anything.
Well,
and he talks about it's great.
Yeah, that was the second single in the key rally for the Dodgers, was an Edmund broken bat seeing eye single. You just get it's a trademark shot. And that's, but you knew off the bat, oh, that's trouble. And that's what baseball is. So Freddie Freeman, real quick, his numbers for his career, just looked him up. He's a career 300 hitter, old school metric, but still really cool if he can finish above that watermark. Career ops right now of 899. He's been a badass for over a decade. He's got a Gold Glove. He's got an MVP, 2 World Series titles, and he's an all-star basically every year. Like, this dude, if you
and a World Series MVP.
Yeah, and a World Series. If you could draw up a career for your favorite young first baseman in your system, this is like the 1% of the 1%. Are you kidding me? He's got 2,200 hits. If he's healthy enough, maybe he flirts with that magic number, but he'd have to be playing quite a few more years. But 300 hitter, opting nearly 900 for your career, that's absurd, especially for somebody who's not going to hit you 45, 50 home runs a year. In this day and age, usually if you have a career ops that high, that's because you're just a straight slugger, not a smart, intuitive hitter, somebody who is also big into contact. Gold Glove, he's been a Gold Glove finalist a bunch too. MVP, just that is one unbelievable career. Already was going to the Hall, but now he stamps it because he's climbing within the Hall. He's starting to climb up those ranks.
And finally, I know that this ought not be considered by Hall of Fame voters per se. You'll never hear a bad word about him.
Oh, very true. Very true.
Every freaking teammate of Freddie Freeman's laud him as the greatest teammate ever. Shows up every day, prepared for work, works very hard, very encouraging for guys that are having a hard time. Is a guy that he can be a soundboard. He can sit and listen. He can talk. He can work through some things with you. Everybody just says it, like a Hall of Fame human being as well. So it's the Freddie Freeman love fest. But good for the Dodgers. Baseball's over. By the way, free agency starts this week. There you go, everybody. Let's find out what happens in Major League Baseball. Let's talk some Noles momentarily. It's the Jeff Cameron Show on a Redemption Thursday, 93.3 Real Talk Radio and Warchant TV. Mentioned it when we were doing the Redemption Thursday wagers that we posted, that the Noles come into this game as 2.5-point underdogs at home, which, is another kick to the jewels. When you think about being an underdog at home to North Carolina, a team that lost 4 straight at one point and gave up 70 to James Madison. As I said earlier this week, by the way, I had it wrong. I think I said and a listener corrected me in the chat, and I'm glad that they did. I said they gave up 48 points and a half. They gave up 52 points and a half. 52. I don't even know that. I didn't think that was possible.
Well, that's the respect you have for the Tar Heels football program, is that
I didn't think it was possible.
I understand that. It's a program with a long history, and that's something they have going for them. They've got a long history.
So all of the things about North Carolina that remain true now, which is that, they give up points, they can be scored on. We said on yesterday's show means that, you'd like to think ... But we've learned our lesson about like to think. We've learned our lesson about just because something may be possible doesn't mean that we are going to exploit it.
Yeah, that was why I confided in you and the thousands and thousands of people that listened to the show yesterday. I feel broken because I'm tired of watching opponents in a game week, really closely watching them, seeing their weaknesses, not needing my prescription glasses to see the weaknesses because they're a bad football team. And in some cases this year, really bad, really deficient in certain areas. And then to come to the realization that it probably won't matter because we're 1-7. And in a lot of these circumstances, we weren't even close to beating the teams that were bad, like Memphis. Memphis is the one, man. I just remember watching Troy and Troy's offensive line be able to create when they decided to get under center and in goal line situations when everybody knows you're going to run, and they manhandle the front for Memphis. I remember thinking, green light special. This is a get right week for the offense. And he scored 12 points, golly, that still sticks in my craw because I look at this North Carolina team and I can see why they gave up so many points. You can push them around on the ground. Now, they found something last week against Virginia, which was they just blitzed and blitzed and blitzed some more, and Calandria didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know how to manage it, and he looked like he was on a playground often enough to where they get off the field, situations happen, and poor red zone execution for Virginia. North Carolina scores with under a minute to go in the first half, and the game's over at halftime. So that's how it got there, was situational stuff, and Carolina found something with the blitz. But they're doing that because they're deficient. They're doing that because their defensive backcourt is hurt. You can succeed offensively this weekend. I think you can, to where you break the 20-point plateau if you're Florida State. That magical glass ceiling that is 20 points in a game for Florida State. In the United States, we have not achieved 20 points in a game. Dublin, we did, but that's because they're a very generous people over there. It can happen, but it's got to happen for me to believe it at this point. That's just so sad.
Memphis, by the way, and it'll be pointed out by listeners from time to time when I do this about Duke or I do this about SMU, and you just did it with Memphis, they'll say, well, they've just got the one loss. Well, yeah, but you got to look at the personnel. And while that is true, look at their wins and then look at the points, basically, by the way. They gave up 56 points to Navy in a loss. They gave up 44 points to North Texas in a win, 52-44. And last week, they beat a bad Charlotte team and gave up 28. They won 33-28, if you don't know. So, it's to your point. They're imminently scorable defenses that we have faced and against, and we have not, made anything of it. Here's the thing. I think there's a chance here, now that we've embraced a little bit more of the quarterback's legs, no matter who's out there, you might be able to engineer something of a run game against this North Carolina team. Every game that Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek play is another step towards being more comfortable with playing on a game day, on a Saturday, under the lights, right? Like that. They now have had collectively games in which, you've played against Miami on the road at night. You played against Clemson and hung in there. Brock Glenn actually had a great game against Clemson, I would say. It could have been a 350-yard passing day if they could catch at all. So you've seen, even though success isn't linear, you are getting kids in moments that they can learn from. In some cases, they've had success in those moments. They've made right decisions. They haven't always been rewarded. I mean, Luke Kromenhoek made the right throw. It's a touchdown pass if Portier can catch against Duke, but he can't. So that happened, but there are these moments in time where they are getting valuable game time lessons. And at some point that leads to, I think, if you have ability, and I believe both have ability, at some point that leads to a little bit more confidence, a little bit more of the game slowing down for you a little bit, just like you can go back and look at that tape, but you can't replicate the feeling, the energy, the juices that flow when you're in a game. And the only way that slows down is to be in a game, is to be in a game again and be in a moment again and be in a drive that matters again under the lights, to be in a situation, fourth down, got to convert, those kinds of things. I do think if Florida State, and it's a big if, guys, I know. And, this week Mike has pointed out that the team has been hobbled a little bit on Wednesday. They didn't have all their pieces. I don't know who's going to play, who's not going to play. It seems like it's a crapshoot every week these days. I kind of hinted last week that I thought the offensive line might not be what people thought it was going to be. And then it turned out, as I thought, not to be what we thought it was going to be. I hear these whispers all the time. That this guy's down, this guy may not be able to play, this guy may opt not to play. There's all these things going around a program that's 1-7? This is what happens. This is the kind of scuttlebutt you get when a team is scuffling. So I don't know who all is going to play, and it does matter. I mean, personnel matters. You're not better, for example, when Byers doesn't play. When Byers doesn't play, you're significantly worse on an already bad offensive line. So when that happens, I'm paying attention. I'll look out there and be like, is Byers playing? Because he's a lot better than anybody else we play at right tackle, and he's not great, but he's a lot better than anybody else. Is Darius Washington playing? He too is not great, but he's a lot better than Robert Scott. So like when I'm out there,
Robert had a good game. Robert had a good game on Saturday.
Relative to the games he's had, I would agree with you.
Relative to Darius Washington's performances this year, I would say I might just want 52. Now, he might go down at any moment because, unfortunately, it's a chronic issue that he's having. And Alex Atkins actually apologized for that this week. He says, once I saw Robert Scott, I used him too much early in his career. I vowed never to do that again. Robert's probably like, thanks, as he airbrushes some more art. Damn it.
Yeah. Anyhow, listen, it's not a good group. It's a little bit better with some guys than others. So it does matter. And if you can ever get Maurice to snap the ball effectively again, that'd be good. That's cool. I'm sure young quarterbacks love it when you snap it off their ankles or over their head. That's a lot of fun. So I have to take my eyes off the defense and what I'm looking at downfield and readjust on the fly while I know I'm about to get hit inside of 3 seconds. That's great.
Yeah, there was a fourth down we didn't get. The killer play was the third down because you got a simple out to the tight end. If the ball is snapped right where it's supposed to be, it's pitch and catch. But the problem is, of course it wasn't, because, you need to make that play.
Yeah. By the way, kudos to Morlock with the catch on fourth down.
I'm glad. I was legit glad for him. And I put that, I'm in the game threads on the site for the game. I said, good for him. That's a big moment. He needs that. He needed that for his future. Like, all right, at least I got over that hump. And I got murdered in that thread because they're rightfully, they don't know where to turn. We see it in the chat every day. They don't know where to turn because once you believe that something's going to happen, like, well, we're moving the football, it's whack-a-mole. Something out of right field that you've never seen before crops up. When has snapping been a consistent issue for Maurice Smith but this season, and in key moments when you got to have it, when you need a clean snap, and now you're thinking about it. Now we're thinking about snaps going week to week. It's just, if something can go wrong this year from an unexpected place, it does.
Well, this is where you get the rot that occurs from within during a losing season or a disappointing campaign. I'm not saying it's a culture issue. People will say it is. I don't think it is. I don't think they have bad culture. I don't think that there are guys quitting on one another in the locker room. I don't think you're seeing, you don't read about sort of toxicity amongst this group. You don't always get the greatest effort. You don't always get what you want to get on game days, but I don't think you see sort of a rotted culture the way you did at the end of the Jimbo era where things were really ugly.
Yeah, I think so. But when you go 1-7, that's how it sets. That's how you have that science experiment in your closet. No, there's no doubt you can get a lot of negativity and problematic reactions to a here we go again moment. But I think those are two different things. I think that is losing begets losing, and there is a oh really this is happening again sort of feel to it, as opposed to F this guy, I quit, I'm not going to give effort. Right Fair. Now, if you pay attention to what's going on in Lexington, there are people who think that the entire Kentucky team has quit on Mark Stoops, and I never thought I'd see that because Mark is great at building culture and great at getting the most out of his players. They're always stabilized at Kentucky with what they are. They may not be great, but they are what they are, and they play hard. You got a group now that's going through the motions, and people are beginning to wonder, are they going to win another conference game? That's quitting. That's quitting. I agree, and because this group, the problem is they're doing just enough. Like the C's get degrees. It feels like effort-wise at certain points. Like
I agree. Yeah,
you're doing enough, but come on now. Earl Little gets on the field or Edwin Joseph gets on the field, and you're made to look like a fool because of how hard they play, and because, as you pointed out, how much it stands out when they do it.
Tom, you're right about this, and I have been reluctant to say this through most of the year because I think we came into the season believing that a lot of the members of our secondary would be the strength of this team. But Shaheem Brown doesn't make plays. He just doesn't make plays ever.
You trying to trigger me on this one? He's the guy that jogs the most
right now.
Well, right now. Now, in his defense, I will say that when I got to see the all-22 from early in the season and there were miscommunications to the left, cannons to the left of them, cannons to the right of them, he was the one who knew where everybody needed to go. He was the one that worked very, very hard to communicate where guys needed to go. If there was motion, he's talking to the slot corner, he's talking to his fellow safety, and half the time the dudes aren't even looking at him and listening to him. So he was the one who did have command of the principles of the defense. Where we have a lot of confusion, he did not. So maybe his spirit was broken, but if it was, then his spirit can be broken on the bench. Okay? Until it comes back and it's revitalized and rehabbed, let the spirit be broken with a ball cap on your head, not a helmet on your head, because it shouldn't be that when Earl Little steps on the field or Ashland Barker, and hope his recovery is going well this week from that scary moment, that you go, oh, look at that. They're playing at full speed. That is an indictment on you. And we'll see what happens this week in terms of personnel shuffling. But when you lose to your rival and their bowl game is off the table, and maybe Mike was trying to tell them that we can always rally, and you're playing North Carolina at home, there's going to be 35, 40,000 people in the stands. This is one where I'm asking again. They have not quit to this point. They have kind of coasted. Are we in for it on Saturday? Because if we are, it's a winnable game. Another one of these with a bad ACC team. But if you're not, North Carolina is motivated enough to just take it from you if you don't care to be there. They're not going through the motions themselves.
You know, it's frustrating. I've watched a lot of teams continue to fight and play hard. One of them is 2 hours away from us in Gainesville, where everybody told us they were done. They had quit. He was destined to be fired. Toughest schedule in the country. Look, I'm objectively, I'm telling you, it's kind of a joy to watch Florida play right now. And I hate saying that because I'm talking about it from a competitive standpoint. Talking about what you need to see from people and how hard they play. They are playing really hard for him. And thus they're in these games and they win. They're winning some of these games. Now they're going about a murderer's row here, but I'm not going to be shocked if they win a couple of these games. I'm not. Yeah. And I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the game in the fourth quarter against Georgia this week. So I just, that's frustrating. That shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be looking around at other teams. North Carolina fighting like hell after losing 4 straight. Kudos to them. You know, they're fighting. They do care. They do care.
Right. So you see certain players do, like, for example, Fentrell Cypress loves to cover. But if there's a throw to the flat underneath and he has to get off of a block, come up and make a tackle, he doesn't look very interested in doing that.
Right.
But if it's one-on-one on a 30-yard downfield throw, my man really wants to be in that moment and plays hard. So you're like, well, I guess we can put up with that. Ja'Kai Douglas is one of your more sure-handed players, even though he had one go through his hands last week against Miami, something that, yes, I'm not trying to trigger you. But in the grand scheme of this offense with these receivers, he's one of the best you got. But if there's a throw to the flat in a wide receiver screen setting,
he doesn't want to block anybody.
He doesn't want to block anybody. In fact, he got one of his teammates injured this year. So, you know, what do you do with it? That's where you kind of just have to make a choice if you see that. And Mike has not made that choice where it's like, man, you're not going to do those things because these are these selfless things that help your teammates and help your team be better. I'm glad that you want to get yours, or I'm glad that you enjoy it when the spotlight is on you. But how about playing for each other a little bit? And you see that across the country, guys playing for each other, taking on blocks, rallying to the football. And with us, you don't see those little things. And that's where I get worried when you bring up the C word of culture. I'm like, man, maybe not. Maybe it's not like what Kentucky is going through right now. But 1-7 leads to 1-8, leads to one. I mean,
sure.
That's where it can become a major issue where it was not in September. It could be in November because you just don't see anything positive happening for you as a football program.
Got a chance this weekend. I'm almost inclined to pick us this weekend. The whole thing to me has to be about getting off to a good start. We've run long. Jeff Cameron Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio. Warchant TV continues in a moment. Tom and I talk for a living, and sometimes we get carried away talking, and that's what happened last segment, because this is going to be a very short segment as a result of that. And in this short segment, we will add to the ledger of Redemption Thursday wagers, and this is kind of a group pick, I think. I think Tom and I are in agreement on this. Looking like a number that's awfully low in a season full of overs post-week 3 in the NFL. Kansas City and the Bucks set at over under 46. We'll take the over 46 for Bucks Chiefs. Now, how we get there, I'm not entirely certain. We're going to have to rely heavily on the Chiefs' offense, which has been pretty average, to say the least. But then again, our secondary in Tampa isn't great. And so I'll go ahead and go with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and guess that they're going to score in the 30s, Tom. We just need, a couple touchdowns out of the Bucks? Couple touchdowns, that's all we need?
Yeah, this is about the Chiefs' run defense in general against the Bucks without their top two receivers. But the Bucks had something last week, had something cooking. So, if the Bucks get to 17-20, you're going to hit this over all day. That's the goal here. The Bucks get to 17, you should be golden.
Come on, Baker. Just get us to 17. We're covering this number. We'll take the over 46. Hour number 2 on a Redemption Thursday, Halloween. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3, Real Talk Radio, and Warchant TV. Hour number 2, Redemption Thursday. Jeff Cameron Show rolls on. Happy Halloween. Favorite Halloween that you can recall, Tom Wang, or any of you out there following along? Everybody's got a favorite one. It could have been a party you went to later in life. Could have been the innocence of childhood. It could have been any number of things that you best remember about Halloween. Do you have one? Do you have a favorite?
Well, yeah. I mean, there was a party that I don't know. Maybe someday I'm bellying up, but it.
Well, this was an adult-themed Halloween party where women were wearing fun things.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's because college, man. The girls love Halloween in college, so for that reason, we loved Halloween in college.
Seems to be universally accepted by young women in college that is the night you can engage in weird fantasies that we're all like, bravo. That's a great nurse's costume you have there. Yes, I mean, to say the least. Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that too. Like, favorite Halloween? I'm like, oh well. But back when I was a kid, there was a great night. We were going through Clearwater off of Hercules. You remember Hercules? Yeah. So it was near the Clearwater Air Park, the airfield. There was an old golf course there. My buddy Trevor lived out that way, and about 8 of us went out. It was that perfect time. It was probably 7th grade.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you're dressing up, and it's still cool because you're not too cool for it. You're not growing up out of it.
You're right at the precipice.
Yes. You are right on the edge, and you kind of know that this is the end of the line. I had the Scream costume, and a lot of kids did at that point. But it was the most comfortable costume, too. When you're a little kid, a lot of these costumes, they're cool looking, but they're not comfortable. You're a sweaty mess, and you kind of realize the plastic is in a place it shouldn't be, and you hate it. But it's the coolest thing because you get to be Darth Vader, you get to be whatever. That 7th grade one, all the candy, laughing until you can't laugh anymore. Yeah, those were the good times. 12, 13 years old were the sweet spot for Halloween.
I was Darth Vader one year for Halloween, and that was the last year that I really loved Star Wars. I saw Star Wars in the theater when it came out as a little kid with my stepdad, Tyrone Square Mall, Tom. And I can still remember going in and being in awe. I was able to suspend my disbelief back then, and I loved it. I thought it was incredible. We had never seen anything like it. I mean, there had never been those kinds of special effects, and just the whole story. I loved it. But Darth Vader was the man. Always was the man. And everybody wanted to be Darth Vader. You're like, oh, Darth Vader's the one. Because the costume was cool and the voice, James Earl Jones, rest in peace, all of it, And I was Darth Vader one year, and that was my favorite Halloween because I think I was one of 17 Darth Vaders roaming the neighborhoods of the Pink Streets off of Pinellas Point Drive.
Yeah, that's the same thing with the Scream getup. I swear to God, that cloak that they had with it must have had a thread count that was, for 5-star hotels. It was the most comfortable thing in the world. And even the smell, because sometimes those masks are just disgusting.
Awful.
The smell of this one was like that pleasant sporting goods store plastic smell. It was just fine. Even when you were sweating, like, man, as far as costumes go, I wish I could wear that right now. Like that, it's almost like a bathrobe. It felt so comfortable.
It's what I was talking about yesterday with my University of Scranton shirt. I could wear it every day.
Yeah.
I don't even know anybody that's ever gone to the University of Scranton, but I love that shirt.
like I'm thinking back on it. I wonder if my mom maybe tailored some sheets. I don't know, but it was just tremendous. So yeah, always good memories. And when I lived out over near Buck Lake, that was the best because the cul-de-sac that we were on, you remember going up the street on that hill.
Sure.
Everybody in the cul-de-sac got into it. All the houses had the special effects and stuff, which means that you get all of the kids. And that's the best. Just the line of kids coming up the block with their little things. It could be a little jack-o'-lantern trick-or-treat bag or whatever. But that's the best part of it, is just seeing all of the kids. Actually, over at Cascades last week, they had like a trunk or treat. And it's watching 6 and 7-year-olds kind of trip over themselves and ask if they can have more. That's the best part of Halloween.
Without question. I've enjoyed Halloween as an adult more than I have as a kid, and especially that's true once I had kids. I mean, getting the kids geared up for Halloween to go to a neighborhood or to meet up with their buddies at an agreed upon neighborhood, right? Where you go house to house. Perhaps the parents are having a couple of cocktails while they watch the kids, and then the kids are adorable because it's like the greatest feeling in the world when you get to go up to a house.
Yeah.
And when you first walk up that driveway, man, and you're like, I wonder what they have. You get so excited.
Well, and that happens too. You're sitting outside the driveway and you see the parents coming over with the kids, and they might have a high noon in their hand, and woo! And you're like, oh, he's not doing that because he's in the spirit, just because he's doing that because he's enjoying spirits or she's enjoying spirits. And sometimes, perhaps the parents of those kids engage in the things that the college kids did. We're like, oh, you're throwing down with a little risque, little Morticia costume. All right, I see you working. Good for you.
Classic. I said I'd do it, and I did. We went to break, and I was able to find some more picks. I kind of scoured my NFL lines a little bit closer than I did early this morning, now that we've moved into the afternoon, and I was able to find a little something for the kiddies out there, a treat on this Redemption Thursday, if you will. So instead of just my normal college picks, which I gave out 9 in hour number 1, we have added to the list. There are the 9, currently hitting at 56%, went 8-2 last week, and now Tom's got on the scroll the latest picks, which we'll update the graphic later too, I suppose. Here it is. I took Matthew Stafford over 241 yards passing, Malik Neighbors over 71.5 yards receiving this week. Look, I don't think the Giants win, but Danny Dimes will have at least a little time to throw against that Washington defense. So Neighbors gets the over 71.5. Cousins over 246 because he gets to go against Dallas's defense, which is dreadful. You might have been able to put that at 346, and I'm bet by Atlanta versus Dallas on that point to the over 52. There you go. Let's sprinkle in those 4. There might be more on hour 3. I don't know. I'm getting crazy this weekend, buddy.
You're getting crazy. I don't know about the graphic updates, because then I'd have to go down to 7-point font, and people would have to get out there, unless they're watching on their television screens, which I don't know if that's happening in your house or not, but more and more people log on to YouTube to watch it on their 50-inch television, their 75 or their 85 or their 95-inch televisions. So they could see it. But if you're watching on your phone, there's no Zoom function in the world that if we had to lay out the 20-some-odd bets that are, I'm sure, no doubt coming by hour 3.
You bring up an interesting subject, Tom, and it was one that I was just reading about. And it's this. It's that we're in a golden age for sports media, or it's been a golden age of sports media with live sports, by the way, ruling all of the TV ratings charts. I read an article yesterday, I think it was, in which there was a recent media day in Bristol. And Jimmy Pitaro, who is the chairman of ESPN, he was asked what keeps him up at night when thinking about the future of ESPN and future of sports programming. And rather than say, hey, look, man, the erosion of the cable television bundle, which made ESPN by far and away the most powerful player in sports media, that's all gone now. And it's the kind of a free-for-all. It's not what he said. He said, well, if I'm being completely truthful to you, it's that we're discovering, based on the numbers, that kids do not watch sports. kids are not tuning into sports. And I'll give you something that kind of blows you away here, at least not traditional locales, Tom. The average age, and I jotted this down in my notes when I read this yesterday because it blew me away. Where did I put this? Oh, yeah. The average age of the NFL primetime viewer for Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, whatever it might, is 62 years old.
Oh, wow.
62 years old. So football, believe it or not, is running into, and we've seen this happen. I watched it in my lifetime. The problem that baseball had, where baseball was at one time, obviously, this country's national pastime, as they said. Everybody grew up playing baseball. Everybody was engaged in Little League on through like Babe Ruth or whatever, everybody played Pony League. And so therefore you watched baseball and everybody understood baseball and they loved them. They bought baseball cards and therefore baseball broadcasts were huge. Eventually, obviously football took over and the baseball ratings began to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. And for a variety of reasons. It wasn't just that football took over, but obviously the proliferation of media gave people more options and more opportunity to discover other things. Well, I found it staggering that was the average age for the primetime games. Now, listen, those ratings are still huge, but the thought about the challenge of trying to reach young people to watch sports, he said, look, they're all distracted by Netflix. They're all distracted by social media. They're all distracted by TikTok and Fortnite, and they're distracted by like where they consume their media is not on television. It's not even really on their computer. It's on their phone. It's on these other streaming devices, their iPads and the like. And he's like, this is why you see everybody going to the streaming model trying to reach kids on their phones. Like, because my kids, for example, will watch Amazon Prime on their phone, or they'll watch Netflix on their phone, or they'll go to Instagram, or they'll go to these different places. And you've got to meet them where they are because they're not sitting down the way they used to do in the living room right after the nightly news with pops and mom. And hey, Monday Night Football's coming on, son. You want to watch? Let's watch the first half together before you go to bed. Like, that's how I grew up. That's what we did. We sat around and watched those games, right? Doesn't really happen. Now, Bryce, my oldest, does do it because he plays football. And he's gotten to where he's very intrigued by the different concepts and the different types of offenses and things like that. So he'll want to see it. And we'll watch, I have the NFL Sunday ticket. And so I go game to game to game. And he's gotten to where he's got favorite offenses that he wants to see how they utilize their receivers. He wants to see the routes that they're running against what looks they're getting. But like, he's probably the exception. Most kids aren't doing that.
Well, I would say a few things. Number one, we don't have to worry about our sport, buddy, because you have an automatic feeder of interests. It's called the student body every particular year that they roll in and they enroll at the university. So college sports is probably in a safe position here. The average age is older because the population is old. The baby boomers are still here, buddy. And I'm glad they are because that's our folks. But my God, I mean, you take a look at, I know it's an election day on Tuesday, but like you look at that, the same people have been around for 20 or 30 years. Well, that's why you see so many commercials for medical supplies. That's why you see so many commercials for Medicare, this and that, because the demo is older. We've got a lot of people who are up there in age, so it does skew older. But on the other hand, like I don't watch SportsCenter anymore. I haven't watched SportsCenter. I might watch Van Pelt because he has an interview, and because I was watching the lead-in programming. But in my era, and I know that you watched it too, but like you're talking about kids, I grew up in the golden era of SportsCenter. I was 10, 11 years old, really getting into sports when you had the Big Show at 6. You had Eisen and Stuart Scott and Kenny Mayne and Steve Levy, any number of all these legends of SportsCenter. That was my time. Every kid that was at the lunch table watched SportsCenter. Now they watch the highlights on YouTube. The NBA talked about this some years ago, that there's more consumption from the younger demo of the condensed games and the highlight reels or individual highlight packages than there is the flow of the 48-minute basketball game. And I could tell you one final example is I got a gift for my nephew this year, which was NFL. It was NFL Plus. I got him NFL Plus, and I said, hey, man, the one drawback to this gift, I just want you to know, is that you can't watch Red Zone on your television. You'd have to screen mirror if you want to do that, but they block the television capability. And he's like, that's okay. I just watch it on my tablet or my phone anyway. So this is the primary way I'd use it, which is crazy because you have this giant television that you're not using because kids will instead use the thing that's in their hand.
Yeah, they're all used to doing it, and they don't mind how tiny the picture is, and they don't mind that they're just heads bent down and it's uncomfortable and the whole thing. I find that interesting. Now, I think, to further cite that article that I was talking about with Picaro that I thought was interesting, by the way, and it makes sense because I began to think about this not long ago. So you can pivot from cable television to streaming, which is what they've attempted to do, and it's why they were all so thrilled. Everybody's so thrilled about how well the Amazon numbers are doing. They're trying to capture that audience because that's the one that is one up from my kids' age. That's like your age, right? You guys got into streaming right at its infancy, maybe a little bit younger than you even, Tom. Kind of like, like Director Matthews' age from back in, I think that.
Correct. I remember an article in a class for Netflix saying the next thing is going to be, they're not even going to mail it to you anymore. So I was,
right.
Netflix was a thing when I was in college, the mailing service, not the stream service.
So the problem is there's a constant hunt for what is an elusive younger audience, and it drives the industry from sports media to news media and Madison Avenue and all those things, right? So I was not surprised that when they were citing the numbers, the only reason, and he deserves credit for this, there's nothing wrong with this, it may not be our cup of tea, but the only reason that ESPN ever agreed to the McAfee deal was because he appealed to the stream audience only. His whole thing was reaching young audiences, being more of an off-the-cuff sort of joke-ridden barstool conversation with buddies, right, where you could curse and do those things, and became really, really big in the streaming era. It wasn't that you weren't hearing McAfee on radio. Nobody heard that on radio. Nobody heard, it was largely born of the YouTube streaming era. And he figured out how to present that product as a basically on your phone product. And that's why ESPN went that route.
He used the Barstool method. I think Barstool might have done it first that way.
They did.
But McAfee is multi-talented. He's a former player. He's involved. He's athletic as hell, so he has appeal to WWE, which is also a younger audience.
Much younger, yep.
Right. So, this is why they used him, is like he's multifaceted. Plus, that offering for ESPN2, you just plug and play. They didn't need to hire anybody. They're just flip the switch. So ESPN was cutting costs in that way. But you can see it. Big major media networks are now investing so much more time in their YouTube product, like we have here on Warchant TV, or in their streaming products, that they know you have to meet them where they are. And younger kids are not picking up a television remote and changing the channel. That's not where they are.
Thursday Night Football viewers for the Amazon game are average age 47. So that's closer to you, right? They're 15 younger. That's 15 years younger than the 62 and a half for the broadcast primetime on television. Then from there, you go and you begin to look at where they're putting their product, right? So there's a reason. Here's a good example. There's a reason, because people got so mad about this, and they're mostly people your age or older, like my age for sure, and people older than me really for sure. There's a reason so many people, and I don't know how this happened or why, and there's a lot of layers to this. People got so mad at the Taylor Swift thing where, she was constantly, listen, just, we won't get into the crux of that. People got so mad, and I would laugh at the people who would get mad at that. I'm like, really? It's bothering you that much? I mean, come on. But moreover than that, I was constantly reminded that it's just common sense that the NFL would wrap their arms around that. they're trying to appeal to the non-demographic, right? They're trying to get the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old girl along with their boyfriends to watch football. So what better way to do it than to have the Swifties joining your product?
Oh, dude, there's a conspiracy theory that the NFL paid for all of this to happen, and they just needed a front man, a player that they could couple together. And I don't believe that, but it would be very smart.
It would be very smart. Well, what I would tell you is that, and here's why that is floated out there. Well, everybody thinks that everything is a conspiracy these days, but here's what I would tell you. Would a player, and in this case, a worldwide entertainer, have the wherewithal and a management team to understand if we join these two things, we make ourselves quadruply powerful than we already are? Yeah, because it's already happened. There have been arranged relationships with celebrities and athletes in the past, musicians and the like. We know that. It's a wink, wink, nod, nod. They go out in public together. They show up at big events. It's good for their brand. The photo opportunities are there. They grow their product. But I don't know if that's what this is or not, or if they care about each other or not. But it would be smart of them to do it. But more important than any of that, it speaks to what the larger conversation is, which is what they're trying. The second it happened, it fell in their lap. They had to be like, wait a minute, is this real? These two are actually dating? Did we get that lucky? At a time where we're trying to appeal to very young people and people that aren't in our traditional demographic, we got a chance with the most popular star in the entire world coming to our games. Yeah, we're going to show her a lot. That's what we're going to do. And that's what that is. Sure.
And, they could actually show more concert footage if they want to. I'm just saying. They don't have to show the press box shot. If you just want to show some concert footage, I'm all for that.
You're saying she's healthy? I agree.
Vibrant. Yeah, man. She's also very talented, like legit talented. Not like Britney Spears where you say she's talented. No, this is a talented artist, but also, she knows what she's doing. So
I'm sure that's what you're tuning in for, is the talent. It's the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Jeff Cameron Show rolling on a Halloween, on a Redemption Thursday. And, when we were talking about costumes, Tom, I used to really love to dress up as anybody that was heavy set so that I could put the pillows around me. Used to love the comfort of the pillows. I had tons of pillows. So I don't know, anybody like Jabba the Hutt or something like that, where you could get the mask and then you could put all the pillows around you. You were talking about comfort.
Comfort's where it's at. Yeah. I'm trying to think of who the hell I was. I was once somebody who's chunky. Maybe I did Super Mario, because Mario's got a big pot belly. So
a little pot belly to him. Yeah.
I might have put something in there to be one of the plumbers.
Yeah, the video game layout was always big. Every year you could do something with your Nintendo, or way back in the day, I remember people being characters from Pitfall. That's before your time, Tom.
I have no idea what Pitfall is.
You don't know what Pitfall is?
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Well, there's a whole generation of people that are right now my age going, Tom doesn't know Pitfall. Pitfall was the best. Pull up Pitfall, buddy. They re-released it recently with a modern version. Well, I don't know if it was recent, but a modern version of Pitfall.
Oh, dear. Oh, shoot. That was a video. Sorry. Wow. This is, I didn't know you could get more basic in terms of a layout than say Frogger, but this is like,
oh, the old Atari 2600 Pitfall was great. You had to grab onto the vines and go over the water, and then ding, ding, ding. Yeah, it was great.
Oh my goodness. This is I'm going to put it up on the screen for the people. Of course, what's annoying to me these days, just for a moment, file types, picture types, they're changing. And so they use these vector formats, these AVIFs. There we go. So you have to convert them. But this layout reminds me of Duck Hunt meets Donkey Kong. That's what it looks like. Yeah.
There's Pitfall, buddy. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
And you had to time your jumps to land on the gator heads. So you'd have to boop, 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 boop to get over them. Or you could swing using a vine as you were racing left to right. If Gene Deckeroff was doing this, he would tell you left to right on your radio dial.
Left to right on your Activision.
Yeah. Dude, Activision had a slew of games for a while where you're like, oh, Activision is king. They have saved the video game industry with all these great titles.
Pitfall. What year was that? You're usually pretty good about remembering how old you were when you played these games.
82, 83.
Ooh, okay.
Something like that. So I had a buddy named Dave Elliott, and I'd go to his house, and he lived 2 doors down from me. And there's the scorpion there. Yeah. And the barrels and the whole.
So how does the scorpion get involved? If you fall through the pit, and then it's like a second level, or what?
Vaguely remember that being the case. I don't know. I think if you fell into that tar pit, you were just dead.
Okay, so the scorpion would just get you and you die? I
don't know if that was telling you what was coming up next, was that you were going to have to dodge the scorpion. I don't remember. Some of these elements I don't remember, but I remember I'd go and spin. So Tom, this is like, again, the newness of things and how quickly things can wear off. Pitfall was state of the art. Like when Pitfall came out, you'd have been like, man, this is crazy. Yeah. Where is the video game industry going to go next? These people are going to be as real as you and me. That's how we thought about Pitfall, buddy. Because remember, we were not that far removed from, Pong.
Yeah.
And so like you go from Pong to somebody actually running and it looks like a person is running. You're like, oh, this is amazing. This is like one of the most. So a mutual friend of ours, physics professor and great guy, TPE told me that he used as an example in his classroom the movie Elephant Man. And he said as he brought it up, he could see the blank faces staring back at him in his classroom. And then he realized, oh, these people don't know the movie Elephant Man. They don't have no idea about this movie. And he's like, wait a minute, how many of you guys heard of the movie Elephant Man? Which, by the way, based on a true story. And Merrick, the guy's last name was Merrick. Anyhow, so none of them knew it. Nobody had ever heard of it. And he sent me a text going, Jeff, I referenced Elephant Man today, and nobody had any idea. Anthony Hopkins is great in that movie, and that movie is amazing. And I think it won an Academy Award. It was incredible. But the point would be, I remember it like it was yesterday. I went and saw that movie in the theaters with my father, and I cried like a baby. Like a baby. I think that might be the first movie besides King Kong, the remake of King Kong with Jeff Bridges, that made me cry.
Oh, really?
When they killed Kong, it was just wrong. They kept shooting Kong for no reason.
Yeah, Mufasa getting ganked in Lion King is one that bugs me to no end. It's not even because he gets chucked. He gets chucked. Long live the king. That's actually kind of badass.
Yeah.
But when Simba rolls up to him and he's like, "Get up, Dad," and he's not.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's kind of cruel for a kid. I get it. This isn't the day where Hansel and Gretel are getting put in a big pot of stew and they're getting boiled alive. Like I know the fables of yesteryear, the old generations were a lot more harsh on kids. But yeah, I don't know. I don't need to see like a 7-year-old rolling up to old dad and like kind of nudging his face and it's not moving because he's lifeless because he just got trampled. Might be a little much for a second grader.
It's tough for all little kids to handle. Like that's why Bambi was so sad when the mom died. Yeah, you're like, what in the world is going on here? They're killing the mom.
Yeah, and this speaks to it. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, took them all to the theaters, like 7 kids, because she had 11. But at the time, 7 of them were around, so she took 7, and all of them started bawling in the movie theater. And she's the sweetest woman. She was the sweetest woman. She passed 20 years ago now. But not in those days. Different generation. She told her kids that she's embarrassed by them. She's embarrassed by their behavior. They need to get it together. Stop crying. Stop being little babies. And it's like, that was different. He goes, my dad says, I remember my mother saying she was livid and embarrassed by my behavior because I cried when Bambi's mother got shot.
Oh, good Lord. So, by the way, The Elephant Man, I was right, was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor. It came out in 1980. I was 9 years old. My dad took me to it, and I cried like a baby because people are mean to this poor, deformed man. And it's tough to watch. It's tough to watch, especially since it's based on a true story where this man was forced to be a freak show, sideshow in a circus
Well,
because of his deformities.
this is where George Carlin was right. A person is amazing. People suck.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The
Yeah.
moment that you get to 2 people, 3 people, 4 people,
yeah.
humanity goes away because nobody wants to be on the outside.
Right.
Yeah. People, a person is wonderful. People, unless you're, of course, doing a holiday show or a charity show, right? Because our group is fantastic, but
I'll point to the fact that it does work both ways, right? We've been able to get folks in mass. Just because we have a microphone to direct attention towards needy causes, and when people see that, they do react in a positive way, and they do help out, and they have done that repeatedly. And that brings me to this: November the 7th, we will be at Barrel Proof in honor of and to help Second Harvest of the Big Bend. We're going to have a great time. Basically, it's a glorified happy hour from our friends at Tried and True Consulting. You guys hear me talk about them all the time. But this is right in Midtown. And if you come and you bring a couple of cans of food or some non-perishable food goods, it'll be greatly appreciated. You can sip on some beverages and there'll be music. I'm going to be there. We're all going to be hanging out and just doing the right thing. And I think a lot of people will do that. It'll be a happy hour from 4 to 7. It's like a 3-hour happy hour. So again, put it on your calendar, November the 7th. And thank my friends at Tried and True Consulting for doing it. And, of course, the great people of the Second Harvest of the Big Bend, whom we're always happy to help out whenever we can. And people do. People do. That's a good thing.
So that's the cool thing. The reason that the QR code's on the screen for that read is you scan it. I just did it with my phone. And it takes you to Tried and True's page, which, of course, has information about their business, but it has information about this event. And it's got a direct link to the Second Harvest of the Big Bend and what the Second Harvest of the Big Bend is all about.
Yep.
So they do great work, and this is yeah, you're right, where the collective group of people can do great things, because the Second Harvest has been a great partner of ours for a long time. But it's awesome when you hear different businesses. ISF is one of them. Tried and True. They're like, hey, we want to help the Second Harvest of the Big Bend, or we value them as well. Let's work together. This is where this time of year you get into November, which is tomorrow. You're getting into the holiday season, and that's when people tend to summon their humanity in a way they don't. Too often, not often enough in the first 10 months of the year.
It's about time for us to start talking about the bowling tournament too, buddy.
Yeah, that's correct.
You know how quickly that sucker, boom, every year. Fantastic. Get a cool air hit you. Wouldn't it be nice if this Saturday, it's not going to happen, but it would have been so nice if this Saturday we got an influx of cool air to help lighten the mood and the spirits, right, of folks walking into Doak Campbell Stadium. What do you think the crowd is going to look like on Saturday in the midst of this historically awful season?
There are some metrics that we are privy to that have me afraid. And I'll even, instead of looking at metrics, I'll tell you anecdotally, looking on Florida State message boards, Florida State social media, 4 free tickets to a good home, 3 free tickets plus a parking pass. Anybody want to go to the game this weekend? I'm sad. That's the moment where all of the hyperbole and the anger and the frustration goes away, because you just look out over Doak, and there's always a good presence at Hotel Indigo. We always have a lot of people come up and just tell us their stories.
Hopefully they will again this weekend. It'll be fun, yeah.
And that's 1 to 3 o'clock this weekend at Hotel Indigo. But then you look over that IM field, and that tells the truth.
Yeah.
The IM field parking lot does not lie about fan interest and about how engaged people are with the program. And I am scared to overlook the 7th floor deck and see what it's going to be in that grass lot. I don't think there's going to be a ton of trucks out there.
We'll be there. We'll be there, and hopefully it's a win for Florida State, and we get a moment of satisfaction on a Saturday afternoon that we haven't had in some time. I do think it's entirely possible. By the way, selfishly, I will use this platform in a way that I normally don't, but I decided a long time ago to head off to South Bend with my entire family, because I wanted my children to have the honor of being able to go to a Florida State Notre Dame game and be at a place that's over 100 years old. And then maybe we'll do some things in Chicago as well. And I am doing that. We've talked to you about Spirit Express. But if any of you out there have 4 tickets together in a Noles section that you want to sell me, I will buy your tickets. I will buy your tickets, because as of right now, I don't have 4 together at all. and we're kind of screwed.
No, you're not. No, you're not. I believe they distributed tickets this week to the boosters. I saw a couple of threads on that on warchant.com. But I would imagine that this would be a buyer's market, not a seller's market.
Oh, without question. Yeah, no, I know that worst comes to worst, I'll be able to get him. I would rather be with fellow Noles. And if there is a fellow Nole who maybe was involved in going to that game and then thought better of it because of this terrible season, I'll take them off your hands. I'll buy them, and I'd be happy to do so. I don't want anything for free. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything like that. I mean, if you've got 4 tickets and you need to sell them, I'll buy them. That's all I'm saying. Jeff at warchant.com.
There you go.
It's that simple. It's that simple. Hey, we should probably talk some sports. We'll do it in a second. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. There was a story on ESPN, 6 college football teams that started ranked and now needed do-over. There have been a lot of these kinds of stories. This part of the season is when they tend to come out. Very similar to the story of who got it wrong in the portal with quarterback play, which was written by Adam Rittenberg. And, of course, I knew immediately that we were going to be front and center of that article. But I don't bring that article up to discuss the teams that they talked about. They mentioned Michigan in this case. They mentioned Florida State, obviously. They mentioned Oklahoma, who's 4-4. And they've talked about Oklahoma State, who's 3-5. Arizona's 3-5, new coaching staff there. USC is 4-4. There are a lot of teams that we've been able to point to and say, ooh, that didn't go as planned, or that is a bitter disappointment. None more so, obviously, than Florida State. But the picture that is at the header there underneath the headline is that of Mike Norvell staring to the sky. I think you have that picture, Tom, which is Norvell staring upwards to the heavens, imploring the football gods to make it end, or so it would seem. That's the look that he had. And I've mentioned before that he had that look a lot. And this was the first time in a long time that I can remember Mike getting into it with assistant coaches on the sideline and being frustrated about that. There's the picture if you're watching on Warchant TV on YouTube. It's just Mike exacerbated, staring at the sky, And I said to Tom off the air that I thought some of Mike's mannerisms, whether he was conscious of it or not, or if it was subconscious, I don't know. But it felt like some of those were performative. And I didn't like it. I don't think it's a good look for a head coach. I think sometimes, first of all, head coaches are obviously under an awful lot of pressure, and there's an awful lot of stress, but there's also an awful lot you have to remember. And I think that third part is the hard part, because you're paid handsomely for all the other stuff. You're paid for all of it. So I don't feel sorry for you, but the remembering that you're on camera and making certain assumptions, assuming that, in fact, you are on camera at all times, is kind of part of the job. That is to say that if you are Brad Pitt or any other star, we talked about Taylor Swift earlier, if you are out in public, you are right to make the assumption that your every move is being recorded, is being viewed, is being monitored, is being documented by somebody. Now, more so if you're an international superstar like the two I just mentioned. But in the realm of college football, if you are the head coach at Florida State or any other Power 4 program, you can safely assume that every time you make a performative gesture or movement, whether it is in anguish or exaltation, you are being documented, and it's going to be talked about. It's going to be shown on the screen. In the case of Mike Norvell, you may have noticed clearly the mandate to directors of any Florida State game is to make sure you capture anything that expresses the kind of forlornness one feels in following this program these days. Nonetheless, it's obvious that the coach is going to be the representative of that, right? He's the one who's engineered this, in essence. And I don't like it. This isn't being hypercritical, because I like Mike. But he's always done such a good job with it, even before they were winning games. He's done a good job of not woe is me theater. And I'd like to see him get back to it. It's not a good look. It looks defeated. I'm not one of these guys who nitpicks at him for his post-game comments sounding very similar each week. They lose in a similar fashion each week. The result is the same each week. He's going to, by and large, comment in a similar way when those things are so consistent. He's going to say, well, we've got to do a better job of executing. You get tired of hearing that? Me too. We got to do a better job of communicating. Get tired of hearing that? Me too. But there aren't many other things that he can say when asked to describe why something didn't work or something went wrong. He can't do much more than to say it's my responsibility to make it better, which he's done repeatedly. There's not much more a coach can do when they're losing, but to take the blame and say, we've got to be better. It's my job to coach him up during the week. We're going to get back after it this week. We didn't communicate. We didn't execute. We didn't do a lot of things. That's how you lose football games. It seems self-evident. It is monotonous, but it is something that is true. And a coach is never going to come out after a game and say, I have failed all of you, and I am so, so sorry. I have failed these players. I am a failure. This is unacceptable. We suck, and it's my fault. Next. I mean, they'll say it without saying it. They've kind of said it repeatedly. He's owned it. There's not much more you're going to say. You're going to try to prevent yourself from rolling your players. I mean, Louisville's defensive coordinator this week said about their defense, which has given up, I think, over 34 points in each of their last 3 games. You know, we thought we had veteran players that had higher aptitudes than they do. Whoa. He went on to say, we've had to dial it back and be less ambitious with what we're trying to do defensively. Now, that is a not so subtle way of calling your veteran players stupid, dumb as a post. I don't think I want my coach doing that. I don't think I want my coach saying those things. It's certainly entertaining, but it's not ideal. It's not what you would do. It certainly wouldn't endear you to your team. It may be true, probably is. Maybe even true what's happening here. But it's on you to get that done and not make excuses. And so I don't get too mad at Mike for post-game comments after yet another loss. I don't get mad that it sounds so repetitive. But I don't need the demonstrative, performative stuff on the sideline, which is stuff I get after players for too, Tom. There's nothing worse than the I just got burned, point my finger at you, where were you moment on the field that we saw so frequently a few years back in the secondary.
Well, yeah, it's not just about, fans or boosters or even colleagues that watch you when you do that. It's your own players. They see it too, and they'll be a reflection of you. I don't like it either. There are things that I would list higher on the priority.
Sure.
Higher priority fixes. But I will tell you, this is another place where I really enjoy the project of doing the post-game show because you get to see where the fans' minds are. I watch the game, being an alum and a fan, I still watch the game differently because I got to drive a show. You watch a game differently because you're not only are you consuming it as a fan, but what are we going to talk about on Monday and what stuck out to me in that moment? So you're documenting things differently than a fan who's just sitting there and experiencing it like you and I were at a Bucks game or you and I were at a Lightning game. So in the chat, the phones, the social media replies, people noticed. We didn't have to tell them like, hey, man, check out what Mike's doing on the sideline here. No, man, they brought it to the table. A couple of people calling Mike names for his attitude on the sidelines. And I think part of it is it's luck or unlucky when a camera cuts over to a sideline. Because in that moment, they might choose Cristobal because Cristobal is putting his hands up and things are jiggling. And they're like, hey, catch that shot. There's some jiggling going on with Cristobal. And you missed the moment where he does that 3 weeks ago. But, I don't know that he ever did. But in this case, they caught him with Papuchis and Fuller, and people noticed. And they said, well, why does he look so disconnected? Oh, boy, Mike looks over his coaching staff. Oh, man, he's done with them. Like, I don't know that he's done with Adam Fuller based upon a 0.8 second camera cut before they got back to the field. I do know he was pissed off in that moment, but people take that image and they speak 1,000 words about it. And he was giving them a lot of opportunities. According to a lot of people down there that were at the game, wasn't the only time that he had his head to the sky. He was doing that a lot, which brings to your point about a little bit of performance theater.
Yeah, I differentiate between a coach yelling at an assistant coach that happens in the heat of the battle all the time. And every coach has done it. I can live with that. I can live like if I pay my assistant coaches an awful lot of money and get them raises, and I have an expectation of their performance, and they're failing me repeatedly with a similar problem, I do think I could possibly turn and have something terse to say in that moment that it happens, and I don't really judge that. The performative, oh, woe is me staring at the sky. Can you believe it again? That bothers me. Don't do that. You're a professional. Come on, man. Let's go. Let's go. And by the way, that's on you. They keep doing this. Why do they keep doing this, Mike? They keep having these problems. Why? I mean, we're well into the season, but the coaches paid handsomely to make sure we don't constantly have 12 men on the field. I'm gonna have something to say about that. That's gonna be a not so friendly reminder of what we don't do around here. Final hour, forthcoming. Stay with Jeff Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio and Warchant TV. Final hour. Bonus hour, Halloween hour, Redemption Thursday hour, all kinds of things encapsulated in this, the last of the 3 hours on the Jeff Cameron Show. And we appreciate you being here. Hey, I don't know what it is. Have you noticed this, Tom? Hard Rock, we've talked about this before. And listen, I like the Hard Rock app. It's better than nothing, but not much better than nothing. Now that there are apps all over the country and legal betting in most of the states in the country, and by the way, we went along for the ride to document all this. You don't get a lot of frills with the Hard Rock app. Like, I can't find like Ladd McConkey receiving yards, for example, in that Chargers game.
Yeah, so
what are we doing here, Hard Rock?
They don't release those till a lot closer to game day. And, on DraftKings, you can get that stuff early, middle of the week. That is the number one thing, just from a gambling standpoint, that DraftKings offered all kinds of weird stuff. And
awesome weird things. Tons of weird things.
I enjoy the hell out of live betting, too, with DraftKings because their live offerings were better as well. More strange things that you could bet on for plays and at-bats and all that kind of stuff. So this is where having only one book in the state is going to hurt you. There's no competition. Now, those other books can come in here. It's just that they would have to pay the Seminole Tribe of Florida some exorbitant amount, like 40 cents on the dollar. I forget what it is, but it's some ridiculous amount that they could come here and compete if they wanted to, but their profit margin is, going to be next to nothing.
Well, we need them to figure it out and get it done because, damn it, this one book thing ain't going to get it done. I would also tell you that we are, as gamblers, in a bit of a quandary in the modern era. Now, beggars can't be choosers. We've documented this. And by the way, I'm talking about this because it is specifically Redemption Thursday, and there's a gambling bent to this show on Thursdays in particular, more than the norm. And I feel like we were out in front of this early on. We talked about it long before it was kind of widely accepted. But the point would be this. It's very, very difficult in the non-cable era to bet on live sports. You are behind. What you are seeing is not in real time.
Yeah.
And that is dangerous if you're going to live bet anything. And, sometimes you really realize, depending on bouncing back and forth, or maybe like you're at home watching the first quarter of a game and then you go and you watch the second quarter, but you pull up your device from back home or something, you can find out that you're a play and a half behind.
Yeah, so the best example of this for those of us living in Tallahassee is Buccaneers football on Fox on a Sunday. The best way to get real-time information, frankly, is to listen to 93.3 and get the radio broadcast, because the radio broadcast will be 8 seconds behind real-time plus a satellite transmission. Like it's about as close as you can get, living as far as we do, to real-time information from a broadcast entity would be the Buccaneers radio network. But what I find is that Fox 49 is on a delay on top of the fact that they're broadcasting the Bucs game. So that game is a full minute to a minute and a half behind what happens in real time. So the hard part about live betting a game that you care about with your own team is that you're going to spoil what comes next for yourself.
Yes.
They won't let you bet on a drive once the drive started. So if you're going to live bet on, say, this drive, the Bucs are going to score a touchdown, you better do it when they're going to commercial break after the previous drive is over. Because if you do it when it appears on your television screen, you're too late. You're too late. You're going to get bad numbers. Or we're in 2nd and 15 and you don't know it yet, and you're betting a bad live wager.
Yeah, that's the one thing about the loss of cable and the cutting of the cords, man. You felt like you were pretty instantaneous back in the day. You still weren't, but you were pretty close. And now you're further and further from being in real time as you watch these games, if live betting's a thing for you. But even just, it's kind of annoying because I've glanced at my phone before. I know about you. I mean, all of us do this. If you look down at your betting app, any betting app, you'll watch the odds changing like this. And before it even pops up, oh, negative play. Oh, positive play.
Yeah.
Oh, negative play. Oh, positive play. And I've done it many times where 4th and 1 in the fourth quarter of a tie game or a 3-point game, I've just checked the app. Did we get it? I mean,
right, yes.
You'll see the odds change immediately. Like, oh, they got it.
Yes. Now, yeah, you can internet-wise. The betting apps are great, and then also, the stat broadcast of a Florida State game. You can find out several, not several minutes, but 60 seconds is a long time when you're talking about sports. That's an eternity, and you can find information that far ahead. Like I'll tell you, when we do the post-game show, if we ever have to go in the fourth quarter because we're getting smoked, which happens all too frequently.
Way too frequently.
I have the stat broadcast up, and I don't have the YouTube TV because you got to focus. We got to talk. You and me, we got to talk. I can't be watching the game. So I'll peek over. I'll take a gander. Oh, we scored a touchdown. And like people in the chat, like, how did you know that? I'm like, well, because our streaming services, God forbid you're on the ESPN app. That thing is like 2 minutes behind. That thing is ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you try to watch the ESPN app, here's an experiment for you. If you have strong enough internet, certainly you won't have the Wi-Fi at Florida State because it's terrible. But if you sat outside of the Oaks at Doak for a baseball game and you pulled up the ESPN app for Florida State baseball, it would be 90 seconds behind. It takes forever for what real-time live television happened on streaming versus what you're talking about, cable or over-the-air broadcast, like it used to be, where you'd hear an echo and then you'd see it on your television screen a half second later. Those days are long gone, partner.
So it is that the Dodgers win the World Series last night. Baseball season is over. I used to ask this about, I don't know, I think you could do it at every level. The next question immediately becomes, after a team wins the World Series, is who goes where next, and if your favorite team is going to be making moves. I know you'll be watching with bated breath the offseason of the New York Mets because you have an owner who's willing to spend. The Dodgers have just now won their 8th World Series title in their illustrious history, and they're the odds-on favorite, according to Vegas, to win it again next year. I could see why they did this without Ohtani pitching, without much of their starting rotation pitching. Dusty May didn't pitch. They had a ton of guys get hurt. To me, this kind of lines up for Braves-Dodgers in LCS next year. The Braves were riddled with injury as well. You could have argued they were the best team in baseball if they had ever had their players. They did not for much of the year. Obviously, Acuna going down was devastating, and that series against the Pirates. But they lost arms as well. So it's not a guarantee. It's not a fait accompli that the Dodgers are back in the World Series. Hell, they almost didn't get there this year. Really could have easily been knocked out by the Padres. They were up against it. We talked about that in hour one. But I do think one of the things that's interesting is you see with the Yankees, as for whether or not they will be back, a very good baseball team. It all hinges to me on Juan Soto. And Juan Soto said after last night's disappointment in which they lost, I will be open to every single team that offers me a contract. We are going to, quote, look at every situation. We are going to look at every offer that we get. I don't know what teams are going to come after me, but I'll be open to every single one of them. And here's what I thought about that. Now, that's Boris talking through him, obviously. And that's smart. He's said now, he already has a ring. We already know that, right? So he's gotten that. He just now has made it plainly clear he wants the money. He wants the money. Now, that's what that is. That's what that means. I want all of the money. I am in the prime of my career. I've won a ring. I just played in another World Series. I'm probably at the peak of my powers. I want $500 million, $400 million, $300 million, whatever it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
The thing I would say about that, being a left-handed at bat, you will never in your life put up better numbers than you put in that bandbox of a stadium in New York. You will never have the opportunity to get 10 to 15 laughable home runs that you wouldn't get in any other ballpark but that child's ballpark that they play in. So wouldn't you, I don't know that you would consider it because you've done well and you're going to hit anywhere because you're a great hitter. I'm not trying to take that away, but you are that much more of a great hitter where pop flies accidentally leave the yard, especially from a left-handed standpoint. It's interesting. Like, what's the number you'd say, all right, if I'm being offered $350 million here, but the Yankees will give me $280 million, would I stay here for the long-term effect that it would have on my career numbers for when I want to go into the Hall of Fame? And then also, listen, it's not like the Yankees aren't going to spend. I've got a chance to be in a World Series again, probably here better than I would anywhere else, save for LA or the Mets across the street. Now he's open to anybody. The only thing I would point out, I would not be shocked, because this is what happened with Ohtani, is does he listen to Toronto? Because Toronto was second in the Ohtani sweepstakes. Ohtani was on a plane. He was as good as going to Toronto before the Dodgers swooped in and said, whoa. We were only kidding. We'll give you what Toronto's offering and then some. And then he did. It was that close.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot to unpack here, and something I'll be watching closely. I've monitored who he is through the New York media, and especially living up there. He's annoying, but he's not the locker room cancer that I thought. Because
yeah.
So the article today actually on him talks about it's Aaron Judge saying that you'll see him in the cage after the game's over, and if he has a bad night, if he draws an 0 for 3. You'll see him first. He'll be the first person in the building the next day. Like, extreme dedication to the craft. Okay, that makes it easier, more palatable if the Mets go after him, because I was like, man, is this guy going to ruin the clubhouse? No, he won't. He'll do his little stupid shuffle thing if he takes ball 2, and he'll start dancing in the box, and then he'll get back in there. Like, all right. But you'll live with it for the 5 tools that he brings to the table. He's going to get somewhere between $500 and $650 million. This is going super, super high. The Mets will not be outbid for him, but they might not be the one that he chooses. So we'll see if the Yankees want to go to that number, or if a team like Toronto wants to go to that number, or if the Dodgers just want to own the sport and defer all this money till later, and then they sell the team and somebody else has to pay the bills. I don't know how it's going to work and what teams are going to, arise. But I don't think it matters for a player like him as much as it did somebody like a Curtis Granderson. Like, Curtis Granderson at Yankee Stadium made,
of course,
he still hit 30-plus bombs in other places, but you can hit 45 in Yankee Stadium. So, yeah, to your point, if you're thinking about not championships but stats for the Hall of Fame because you've already won your World Series, Yankee Stadium is the most favorable place to play because you're going to be under contract until you're 35, 36, or maybe even older. So this is going to be your home ballpark forevermore, unless you decide that you want to put opt-outs in your contract.
Well, it gets fun. If you're a baseball fan on the day that the season ended late last night, you do start down the path of, all right, well, who's available, who are we going to get, who's realistic? And again, Juan Soto tops that list on the season, for those that don't know. 288, 41 home runs, OPS nearly 1,000. He also, Tom, was healthy, 576 plate appearances. That's a very healthy season, obviously. That, you know what, by the way, the power potential for him to have more than that kind of a season is there. It's especially there if he hits in New York. He can stay there. Would he come across the street to the Mets? He could.
Yeah, no, we've been tied to him for a year now. There was thought that we didn't go after Ohtani with both barrels because we knew. See, the Mets, where we are, we need to catch up to be even in the discussion with the Braves and the Dodgers, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
We put a lot of small pieces together. It's a large payroll, but most of those guys were gone. we were the little team that could, relative to the machine of the Braves that got hurt, the machine of the Dodgers that arose just at the right time. And the Padres don't suck either. So
no.
There's a lot of work to be done to be in that conversation amongst the favorites. The Mets right now are not even close to a favorite in the National League. But the thought was, because $180 million is coming off of the books this offseason, that a redistribution of that money will be heading towards Juan Soto. We will not get outbid. The Mets made the same offer to Yamamoto that the Dodgers did.
Right.
Dollar for dollar. But we were the Mets and they were the Dodgers. That's why we weren't chosen. So that's what will happen here is Soto's either going to be a Met because he took the most money, or he'll be somewhere else because he likes the situation somewhere else better than with the Mets.
Yeah, and the teams in the National League, as you get set for next year, we already know who they are. They're the Phillies, they're the Braves, the Mets, they're the Padres, and they're the Dodgers. I mean, those are your teams that are going to war in the National League. Somebody else may rise up. They're candidates, but those are your five. Those are the ones that you're going to be looking at as odds-on favorites to go back and to make a go of it and to have opportunities. And in the American League, the Yankees will be part of that again. Of course they will, and rightfully so. I am kind of curious. Judge woke up last night finally. It would have been a good night for him had he not dropped the ball like a little leaguer on a blind drive, which is right to him, which opened the floodgates for the fifth inning nightmare. Imagine you're him. You finally hit a home run. You finally do something in this postseason, and then you drop the ball like you're a wee child. That's crazy. I mean, that's a toughie. That's a toughie because in the eyes of Yankee fans, it will completely negate the offense that you had last night.
Well, they're just stuck with each other. That's the unfortunate thing. You're stuck with this bum who, great, Aaron, you're going to hit me 50 bombs. Whoop-de-doo. Do it in October when it matters. I look forward to that relationship becoming more toxic over time. And the undercurrent of, of course he hit 3 home runs. It's August. Like I look forward to that being a thing and him getting so tired of the Bronx that he wants out.
Yeah. We forget he's older than he is. I mean, people think he's young. He's not young. Not in baseball terms.
He kind of sucks, Jeff. He's not a very good ball player. He's all for show. He's all for show. He's not for substance.
Corbin Burns, Alex Bregman, Willie Adames. These are all guys. By the way, somebody will go out and pay Blake Snell a lot of money. He's 32 years old. He's available. There's a lot. There's a lot available out there. You know who won't get any of them, guys? That's right. Your Pittsburgh Pirates, everybody. They won't get a single one of these guys. They'll opt for the 37-year-old pitcher whose arm's about to fall off and hope like hell they can spin him at the All-Star break because he's 8-4 with a 3.98. That's what they're going to do. That's exactly what they're going to do. That's the thing. Again, we talk about our teams because we know the fun underdog thing was awesome. I really enjoyed this ride, and as it turns out, between us and the Padres, we played the Dodgers a hell of a lot better than the Yankees did. So the National League, Padres had a beat. I mean, they were that close to moving on, yeah.
And they dared to dream, and we think about a couple of innings where just throw strikes, you jerks. Why are we walking the world? But now we're going to evil empire status from, the fun-loving, weird 40-year-old guy who's got a hit song, Candelita, and Grimace. No, now you're turning into, what the Dodgers are and what the Yankees are, which is you're going to try to spend and spend and spend some more.
Well, at least you're aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you'll be any less of a fan, but when the rest of us are like, nobody's wrapping their arms around the $350 million payroll of the New York Mets.
That was our payroll this year. It's just that we paid all those guys to leave.
I know. That is the comical part. You know what we got to do? We got to solve for the future with our wonderful collaborators and friends at ISF. Supposed to see Jonathan today before Halloween gets going and all that. Looking forward to seeing him. We'll solve for the future. It's harder and harder to do for Florida State, but we'll do it. We'll do it next on the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. In a moment, we'll be solving for the future thanks to our friends at ISF. They're there for you. Trusted thought leader in strategic services for public sector agencies. You've heard me mention this before. Consistent presence for employees and clients who absolutely love what they do. They want to collaborate with you. They want to make things symbiotic, where you respect each other's ideas and you thrive and you make a difference. Serving over 200 clients, 40 plus years of experience nationwide. I'll get to it in a second. Tom and I will solve for the future. But a reminder, FSU men's basketball team playing their second of 2 exhibition games. This one starting now. They're hosting the University of West Florida at the TLC-CC. It was originally scheduled for 7 p.m. And then all of a sudden people realized, oh, wait, it's trick-or-treat night. It's Halloween. Why did we schedule this here? Yeah, I don't know. But it is just an exhibition. And if you don't have kids to worry about and you're not going to a Halloween party and you're listening to this show, race over to the TLC-CC right now and you can watch it. This is a Division II program, is UWF. And last year they weren't a good Division II program. They went 8-20, and they lost the entirety of their roster for the most part. I will say this: that might be a good thing if you go 8-20. They don't have a lot of size, as you might imagine. A 6'9" center and a 6'7" forward are about all they have. And do you know, Tom, UW, that's the University of West Florida, UWF, what is their nickname? Do you know?
Oh, God. Well, they're out in Pensacola. So are they the Blue Angels?
They are the Argonauts.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
They're the Argonauts. So that's what you got. We'll see if we can limit the opponent's field goal percentage from 3, which is something we didn't do real well last year. Hopefully we'll dominate the glass like we did against St. Leo in the first matchup. And then, of course, you got to convert more threes on your own offensive end, where we make 6 of those, 33% beyond the arc. That wasn't going to get it done. So let's see. What are you laughing at?
I said, sure. Yeah, 6. That sounds right. Yeah.
So there you go. That's it. That's what we got. That's I just wanted to be heads up, everybody. They're playing in case you wanted to go, in case trick-or-treating wasn't your thing.
Yeah, you mentioned it yesterday, just how far the sport has fallen, not just here, but generally in the eyes of the nation.
I think nationally it has. Absolutely it has.
This was one of my first true sporting passions at Florida State. Of course, I grew up a Nole watching football, but when I got here on campus, this is the last decade. And so what I bonded with very closely was Florida State basketball, because I could walk from Seminole Oaks, it was a long walk, from Seminole Oaks to Old Cash Hall all the way over to the TLC-CC. It was a good 20, 30-minute walk across campus, but I was getting to know Florida State for me. And I would stroll on over there, walk into those games, and we were okay in that first year. We did beat Duke. We were on the bubble, and Vitale was crying for us, but we were on the bubble, so we weren't that great. But it was just the multicolored seats, thinking about the early 90s days when I really was watching a ton of Florida State basketball with Bobby Surratt. Charlie Ward was one of my sporting heroes as a kid. Like, I loved that program, and I still do love that program, but damn it, man, if it isn't just, it's a different era. And I'm hoping that maybe we can have a little bit of Junkyard Dog 1.0 to this season's team, where we can be fun to watch and we can compete with some of those teams that spend $6 million in their NIL budget.
It's funny you bring those teams up. I was in school then and lived off of St. Augustine, and in a town. Well, I didn't live there. My 2 friends owned 2 different townhouses there. They didn't own, they rented. And it was across the street from the TLC-CC. And I spent the vast majority of my days over there after I would get done with class. And I would walk over there. And Florida State basketball, I was very fortunate because 91, 92, 93, those are good teams. And you mentioned it. I don't know why. I mean, Doug Edwards was probably my favorite player. He was 6'9". He was like 230. He was mean. And I love Doug Edwards. Now, Bob Sura was a superstar. We already knew that. That team was fun. That had Sam Cassell. That had Charlie Ward. Byron Wells, who we still know to this day, all's wells that ends wells on the 3 in the corner. And of course, Rodney Dobard, who I absolutely loved as well. That was a fun team. And we used to like pre-party at the townhouse off of St. Augustine, pre-party to say the least, on the nights that FSU basketball had games. And we would walk across the street to go to those games. And I'm right there with you. Those were glorious times. The pockets of really good Florida State basketball are just that. There have been windows of time for 5 to 7 years, 2 to 4 years, things of that ilk. Never a prolonged decade of greatness, but there were these moments. And if you happen to either be in school or lucky like we were to cover the two runs that Leonard's had, first the Junkyard Dog defense, and then later on the transformation to Leonard 2.0 that we've talked about, you know how joyous it can be because you're always the underdog program. You're never UCLA. You're never Kentucky. You're never Duke. You're never North Carolina. You're never any of those teams. You're always the, hey, look at that. Florida State's really good this year program. That's what you are. And, we're too far removed from it now not to lament the fact that it's going to be a long time before we're back in that pocket. I don't know when that will happen. I presume it will happen when Florida State is part of the Big Two. Then you have the legitimate money that you can sink into your program and make a go of it. Although I do wonder if it's not just a grand folly. If you're not named Kansas or you're not named Duke or North Carolina and you're not named some of the, the creme de la creme of college basketball, why are you investing all of your money in basketball or even a good chunk of change in basketball? Because in truth, we know what money football brings in. And you'd be better off diverting those funds just to having a great quarterback.
Unless consumption habits change again and, the younger generation, ties themselves more to basketball. And then at that point, you need to go a little bit more all in.
They have, Tom, but let me just say this real quick to your point. The younger generation loves basketball. They love the NBA.
Yeah.
That's where all the money is. That's why the NBA has money hand over fist to where they can subsidize a losing league like the WNBA that loses $40 million a year, if not more. And then people complain we don't talk about the WNBA. Well, that's because women don't even go to watch the WNBA. That might be changing because of Caitlin Clark and others. But the truth of the matter is that's a losing league. They lose money every year. And if they weren't subsidized by the NBA, they wouldn't exist.
Yeah, that's all fair. It might be changing finally now. It took long enough, but those numbers are real. And it started with women's college basketball numbers, which again, you've got a strange thing that's happening here, where softball outrates college baseball, though college baseball's had a nice little renaissance of late. But women's college basketball.
I'm not against it. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I'm not against those things thriving, especially since the level of play and competitive balance has gotten to be so much better. There was a time where it was a useless effort to tune into women's basketball. There were two good teams and everybody else got beat by 50. When you're watching Final Four and Elite Eight games and the winner is 68-20, this is not fun. This is not basketball. So I'm glad it's changed, and I hope it continues to change. And the more I watch, when I do see the better players now in the WNBA, I see real skill that is commiserate to like men's low-level college basketball or something. Yeah, you see it.
Well, yeah, I'm not even talking about relative value of men's versus women's sports, but what I am talking about is relative ratings between men's basketball and women's basketball at the collegiate level. That is something that men's college basketball has to watch very closely. And then the other thing, again, you can't get away from it right now. College sports is in this purgatory of crap.
Yes.
And until you unionize, and they have to run into the arms of this to regulate the talent pool market and the pricing for the talent pool market. When you get to that place, then I think that also ushers in an era where Florida State can be more competitive in basketball because you have market regulation a little bit more than you do right now, which is the Wild West has always been more wild in basketball than football because the elite are fewer. And so the price goes higher. If BYU is willing to spend $3.5 or $4 million for the best player in America, what the hell does Duke's roster cost on a year-by-year basis? That's the thing that we got to get a handle on. That the moment we do, Florida State at that point can be competitive on the level that they were with 2.0, which was we went skill for skill with you.
Yeah.
You want to talk about ACC draft picks in
you had NBA players
of 3 or 4 years. Florida State was right up there. I fear the only way for Florida State to compete at this point is for it to look like Junkyard Dog 1.0, Leonard Hamilton's first go-around, which is we're an exhausting bunch to play against with veteran players who don't have NBA talent skill sets, but they're 23 and they played together for 3 or 4 years. Like, that's probably our path to competing now.
It's funny you bring that up. You remember last year Florida State beat, I think early in the season, Florida State beat Colorado in basketball?
Yeah.
Remember it was a close game?
It was a Friday night, I think. Yeah.
The first or second game of the year.
Yeah.
It was early. I know that.
Yeah.
the reason I bring it up, it's little things like that that I remember that you catch a snapshot or feel the emotion. Or, I was down in St. Petersburg visiting my grandmother in Treasure Island. And I was at her place. Right near her place is a restaurant and bar that has been greatly affected by the storm, just like everything else in that area of St. Petersburg. And my heart goes out to all of you. We know firsthand in my family the tragedy of that situation. Not going to rehash that. But I was spending the day with her, and she said, why don't you go and get us some food and we'll watch the game here. Take your time, go up there. And she knows I love Ricky T's. Shout out to Ricky T's. So I go up to Ricky T's, and they've got an outdoor bar and an indoor bar, and you get the breeze off the ocean, off the Gulf. And it was perfect, Tom. And I was waiting on my shrimp tacos to go, and the Florida State basketball game is on. And we're playing well. And we're a little engine that could in the moment because Colorado was supposed to be good. And we're watching that, and I'm like having a cold beer, enjoying the ocean air, and I'm watching that game, and I'm reminded that I kind of liked that underdog status where you thought, oh, all right, guys, I see you fighting out here. This is enjoyable. And now, yeah, there's some lament to all of it because now that bar is remodeling and trying to survive, and many of the houses are gone and all of that. But the basketball program has also been gone, and that is disheartening. So I hope it's not too long a time when that transformation that you describe, I hope it's not too long a time between what we were and what we could be.
Yeah, that I would tell you, if I was to rank maybe my 5 favorite game day experiences across all Florida State sports, at least 3 of them, are basketball.
Yeah.
There's just something about it, that building when it's going.
More intimate. It's more intimate.
Yeah, and you're bonded with the community, for that game. It feels more like a community event than it does a big production. Now, don't get me wrong. Florida State Auburn in Pasadena is on that. And it's probably number 1 on that list.
Yes.
If you're talking about pure enjoyment by the minute, per capita, just smiles and action and back and forth, man, that building, it has the potential to be one of the epicenters of the sport because for about 5 minutes, it was one of the epicenters of the sport in 2020. I mean, Jay Billis said it himself, sitting on the court, patching into Bristol, Connecticut for SVP Sports Center, saying, I've never seen it like this. This is
he was in shock.
One of the best atmospheres and toughest places to play in the country.
Yeah, we had it rolling like that, and I'll always thank Leonard for it. That was an amazing time. So guess what? You get a double whammy. You had the entire pre-segment to Solving the Future, my friends at ISF, to actually us doing the Solving for the Future next segment with more ISF. It's all coming up. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Time now to solve for the future from our friends and with our friends at ISF, local company that's nationwide. We've talked about the many things they do in the community, and they are often apt to help out with things like what we're doing coming up on November the 7th at the Barrel Proof Lounge. They've been partners with us in many philanthropic ways, and we appreciate that, doing really good stuff, and they've been doing it for a very long time, 40-plus years, in fact, ISF. Combining your vision, their expertise. Go check out more and learn more about ISF if you're out there wondering how they can help you, isf.com. Tom, the season ends and so it begins is the way to describe solving for the future for Florida State football. Much of what we're preoccupied with right now is not the game on Saturday, sadly, and not the remaining games on Florida State's schedule, which includes, unfortunately, another rivalry game with Florida that we ought to be intensely concerned with, but instead it's an afterthought because of what happens immediately following the year, which is a relatively quick turnaround, not only with the staff changes that you've got to make, but the portal and signing day. I mean, all of it. It becomes it's on the horizon and it's imminent. And it's all that consumes us now after a season like this, which is what changes are going to be made. December, as you and I have pointed out to our listenership, and certainly we've to some degree lamented to each other, is one of the busiest times of the college football season. Used to be time that, like everybody else, you could maybe schedule some vacation at the end of a long football season in which you worked 6 to 7 days a week. Instead, it becomes the time where you ratchet up the intensity and focus. And that is especially true this year when so many things have to change. And you're just going to wonder on a daily basis what kind of news leaks. Does Florida State have an in on a player that will help change their fortunes on the defensive line? You and I were going to discuss that defensive line earlier. Now we're going to be looking intently because they're going to need a lot of help there depending on who comes back and who doesn't. Portal in general. Intense focus. And of course, the coaching staff changes. How soon are those announcements made? And then what can Florida State put together to put some sort of finishing touch on a class that frankly may rank well outside the top 25, top 35?
Yeah, right now you're watching the games, but the season is in December. This is something I think it was early last week talked about and saying that, hey, 2 months from now, you're going to have a hell of a lot more answers. As we get closer to Christmas Day, you're going to have a lot more answers as to what the program that you're watching, the program that is going to help define whether Mike Norvell is here long-term or not, is going to look like. Coaching changes, what young players on the roster decide to ride out, what players we tell to have a good day. Might not present that way into the media, but it's just that we're parting ways with a certain player they announce are in the portal. Maybe it's because we wanted them to go. What guys would be considering Florida State? Could Florida State make any 11th hour runs at some unexpected recruits because they're going to open the briefcases? They got to make a splash at some point the Wednesday after Florida. Maybe that's something that happens where if you have a coaching change. Look, it happened in the span of 24, 48 hours when Jeremy Pruitt left Alabama after they won a national championship for Florida State. He brought Jalen Ramsey and DeMarcus Walker with him, as I recall. Yeah. Two very nice additions to bring with you, and it was basically because they were in his back pocket because he was their primary recruiter. So maybe there's a swing that happens after the Florida game like that sees you get a couple extra high school yeses than you were anticipating on a signing day. And so while the class is not something that you're going to write home about and you're not going to talk about years from now, you got a couple of pieces you didn't expect. Signing day, again, is the Wednesday after Florida, and then the 8th/9th is the beginning of the portal window opening. So within 10 days of December 1st, you are going to have major changes two ways for Florida State's roster, and then the coaching staff changes will have occurred, I would think, in the 24, 48 hours following the Florida game. I would have thought some of them would have happened by now, but this is it, man. This is the stuff that is going to define whether next year is one that you feel like you're armed for the fight, that you can at least compete, or if you feel like next year is a play out the string year where what are the real changes coming, and we're kicking the can down the road. December is critical for that, and it's not that far away now.
It's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day who's very close to arguably my favorite player in Florida State football history, Marvin Jones. And I got to thinking about his son and his role on the team this year. And we're sitting here solving for the future and talking a lot about what we think is going to happen and where they should concentrate their resources. And, I begin by talking about the offensive line. And, I'd spend an awful lot of time on your offensive line. I'd probably ride with one of these young quarterbacks. I don't think I'd go in the portal and get a quarterback. I'd try like hell to keep both these kids, really advertise this as one hell of a contest in competition that starts in the spring and just see what you get. Now, hopefully you can keep them both. I don't know that you will, but that's what I'm crossing my fingers for. But on the other side of the ball, I began to think about what you need to look at. And again, per our defensive line conversation, you do realize that Marvin Jones Jr. played both ways in high school. He was a tight end as well as a defensive lineman. And I know you got two young, really talented tight ends, but I was told that Marvin Sr. and others thought his future was truly going to be that of a tight end. Did you know that?
No, I that recruiting isn't necessarily my lane. Not necessarily. It's not at all my lane. But he was recruited as a defensive lineman, everywhere.
Everywhere, because that's where he did most of his work, and he doesn't have a prolific history of catching passes, but he did.
What's interesting is that according to at least what I'm hearing from Amari Williams' camp, he really wants to go to the other side of the ball and play defense, and he wants to play defensive end. Could you see Drew there?
A little flippity-doo, being discussed on the JCS today during Solving for the Future. Hey, I know this. I've watched him do it in practice. Marvin Jones Jr. can run, can really run. He's 6'5", 257 pounds, Tom. If he's got hands, let's go, because he hasn't provided much of anything at all as a defensive end.
Well, I would say, and this is not tongue in cheek. This is just me being an evaluator. How does he feel about contact? How does he feel about blocking? Because I see somebody who's explosive on third and obvious as a defensive player, but I really like when Lola Hay is out there on the rundowns. I like when Lola Hay is out there in general. I wish he had another year of eligibility.
I don't disagree with you about that. This is all the more argument for maybe we take Marvin and put him on the offensive side of the ball.
As a tight end, though, it's not like you're free from getting contacted and having to block and responsibilities that require physicality. Maybe it's that he would just rather have the reward of the ball in his hands, and that makes it all easier. But he's certainly a piece that you're going to have to place on the board in a way that it's not being placed now, because you got Lyons. You got KJ Sampson.
I like Lyons and Sampson a lot.
You've got Marvin. If Peyton wanted to come back, would you take him? I don't know.
You would take him, because it would mean that he didn't get what he wanted in terms of an answer from the NFL about draft stock, and he'd have no choice but to show out.
Well, you could have argued that was what this year was about, and
you could have, and I'm not in disagreement.
I'm going to give you 50% of what I gave you. What do you think of that? Because the thing is, every dollar counts now. Every dollar counts. So that's with the defensive line. I'm sure the two interior guys are going to go. Daryl's only getting better as time goes on. Farmer has done enough, I think, to go play.
I think Farmer's done enough. Daryl may have the body type and the ability at the combine to change his fortunes to a much higher draft grade than he's going to receive based on the season.
But if he continues down the path, he's like, if he finishes with 5-6 good games in a row, that'll put him on the radar in a way that he's not right now. But the last two efforts have been very, very good out of Daryl Jackson.
They have been. It's what we've been waiting on forever. It's really such a shame. It's just taken so long. Would have loved to have seen it be impactful, say the first couple of games of the season. Yep. I don't know. It will be fascinating. I want the concentration to be on the line of scrimmage. I want to see the effort and the monies spent on defensive linemen and offensive linemen. Whatever happens from there, whatever you're able to bring in at the other positions, in particular the skill positions, it will matter, but everything is made possible by what you are on the offensive and defensive lines. And frankly, we haven't had a lot of depth on the defensive line this year that has made an impact at all. They haven't been a frontline defensive line, but they haven't been terrible. They don't get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. They did this past week against Miami, which was why it was even remotely close. And obviously, the offensive line has been an abject failure. There's no getting around that. So I would put my monies in the offensive line. And in fact, I'd overstock it. I'd have so many players. You're like, good God, we got our 9th offensive lineman in the portal. Yes, we did.
Yeah, that's got to be the first priority, because beyond trying to win football games, you got to score points next year. You're fired if you don't score points next year. You're an offensive coach. This is one of the worst offenses in the country. Yeah. There's a couple of ways you can go 7-5 and 8-4. But I would rather go 7-5, 8-4. I think it's in Mike's best interest if you do so, even if you lose a couple of games 41-35. Because you need to touch 30 a little bit more often. So when you're assigning the pie charts, what goes where, offensive line, offensive production has to be way of a higher priority than defense.
Yeah, and like you said, they're going to end up having to overpay for all of that. They really are. But I that's fine. I mean, you don't have a choice. And now, again, some of what you've seen all around the country, Tom, is guys from Group of Five programs going to other places and having success. and changing rosters, changing fortunes. That's Solving for the Future from our friends at ISF. Last couple of minutes of the program to wrap up here as we get set to wish you a very happy Halloween. We will be back with you in studio on a glorious Libations Friday. Any Halloween plans tonight, brother?
Oh, no. Halloween plans? I might munch on a little bit of candy. I was tinkering with the idea of getting 9 holes in and trying to see if I can be a little less spooky off the tee than I've been of late, but no.
Oh, look at you. Look at you working it in. Yeah. As for me, I'm just going to be doling out candy. I like playing the role now. Come on in, kids. There you go.
Do you wait at the door or do you go down to the driveway?
If I do it the right way, I set up shop at the end of the driveway. I don't make you walk all the way up to the door.
You could have a game of, well, I know Bryce right now you can't really do this, but you could have a game of horse with the boys, and then that way you're at least occupied as the kids walk around. It
would be a game of pig, but I actually think that the boys will all be out. They're on their way to various parties and the like. So this is what you get with teenagers.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I know. But luckily, I trust the older one more than I trust the younger one, and the older one's doing the driving. So that's how that works.
Very important. Well played.
Yeah, it works out well. Good work out of you. Thanks to everybody out there. We really appreciate you. Thanks to our friends at ISF as well for that last Solving for the Future. You guys have a great night. Be well. Talk to you soon, as in tomorrow. Until then, peace.